Chapter 418. So it was Ren Hong. Luo Nan never thought that the answer would come so easily. Any suspicions of bait, a traitor, and the like were instantly swept away. But the unexpected had to be unexpected. Luo Nan didn't really understand Ren Hong. He just knew that he was a true big shot in the business of the Blood Flame Order. He was much stronger than Yin Luo, who was distracted by other things. Among the priests of the order, his importance was second only to Lady Halder. Many times, he acted as the substitute priest. How could such an important person betray just like that? Several deep blue walkers took up a defensive formation, surrounding Ren Hong within. They were tightly protected, and this directly proved this person's position. Ren Hong was at the center of the formation. He pressed his palm against the ground and muttered an incantation. Since this was the lowest level of the underground parking lot, there was thick soil beneath the cement floor. Ren Hong used it as a channel to continuously absorb energy. He formed a nearly substantial incantation to bless his body. A low rumbling sound was heard. Someone was contacting him. Coincidentally, Luo Nan sensed the two fulcrum points on the other side of the call. Tian Bang was on the other side. He was in the command center. In front of everyone, he spoke softly, "How is it?" The image displayed on the central hologram was the real-time situation of the underground parking lot. Several deep blue walkers wore protective visors, but Ren Hong only wore priest robes. He didn't have anything covering him. Cat Eyes pushed aside the messy hair in front of her eyes and clicked her tongue. Ren Hong was a big shot in Xia City. Of course she recognized him. Ren Hong also noticed that Tian Bang used the public channel to contact him. His expression was very ugly. But since he had done something, he had to bear the corresponding consequences. In the end, he simply lowered his eyes and focused on the leaping spiritual light on the ground. There's already a reaction. The mold is still nearby. It views us as prey. It's greedier and more powerful than we imagined. This means that its basic qualities are extremely good. After becoming a sacrificial artifact, we can hold high expectations. Tian Bang inquired, "What about the specific location? Can you control it?" Ren Hong didn't even raise his head. "You guys from the restraining faction are all thinking about this sort of thing. You are too." "No. I just want to see the perfect blood flame willpower. I want to verify my life's worth of learning. And that businesswoman will never be able to do it in her entire life." The scene of the public channel was transmitted to the mission window through Cat Eye's shared perspective. An impactful answer. This caused Papercut to only send out a dumbstruck emoji. Then, Ren Hong's seemingly unintentional counterattack caused Papercut to be unable to hold back from sending out a voice message. F***CK, these guys. Oh my god. Cat Eyes also sent a message, "The Blood Flame Order is so awesome. Do you know about the He clan?" Shui Lei could only send an "I'm confused" emoji. Who is this person? What's that Thai control faction? Papercut kindly introduced Ren Hong's identity to him and said, "The Binding Control faction is a branch of the Blood Flame Order. It involves the interpretation of the Blood Flame Order's teachings. It's rather complicated, so I'm not too clear on it. But all you need to know is that the Blood Flame Order of Xia City and this control faction are absolutely mortal enemies." As he spoke, Papercut was puzzled. This bro Tian Bang is too direct. Is it really alright to discuss the matters of a secret order in public? He's an active general. He Yueyin explained, at the end of the 80s, the Restraint faction had already cooperated deeply with the military and participated in many experimental missions. It's just that their secret rank is very high, but their reputation isn't that prominent. I've had dealings with Tian Bang before, but I didn't know that he had such a close relationship with this branch. Then what is this now? He Yueyin didn't reply. It was impossible to determine whether this operation was a continuation of the hatred between the Blood Flame Order's factions or a request from the military for in-depth experiments. Or perhaps it was something else. At this time, the public channel was on the right track. Tian Bang displayed a magnanimous attitude. Right now, we must capture the remains of the human-faced arachnid. You're the expert. Everything will be done according to your wishes. Ren Hong sneered, your words are piled with the stench of burning the bridge after crossing the river. Hey, as a member of the restraint faction, isn't inviting you to control them the greatest sincerity? I hope so. The conversation between the two continued in a tense and subtle atmosphere. Most of it was due to the influence of the human-faced arachnid. And at this time, the main culprit who exerted this pressure was evaluating the new information. This is one of Tian Bang's trump cards. The wraith sign's sharp claws plucked at the stars, touching upon the window to the bottom of the target's heart. It was like playing with a glass ball. The situation is becoming clearer and clearer. We should let the blood flame order enter the battlefield faster. The more hasty the response from both sides, the more advantageous it is for us. It's decided. Luo Nan's eager will led the wraith sign's actions. The wraith sign circled several more times on the mental plane. It saw an opportunity and suddenly launched. An unobstructed and ruthless aura rose like a hurricane from nowhere. Ren Hong was operating his spell in the underground parking lot, continuing to strengthen his connection with the Blood Soul Temple. Suddenly, an earth-shattering disaster came over there. Found it. Oh no. The wraith sign's killing intent surged in the boundary between the mental and the material, tearing apart the sacred space created by Ren Hong's spell. Ren Hong raised his head fiercely. His eyes, strengthened by the spell, could already see the human-faced arachnid baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. The distance between the two was extremely close, so close that it broke through the bottom line of his mind. Ren Hong looked at the wraith shadow pouncing at him in a daze. He actually lost the ability to react for a time. In the next moment, a blazing white wall of fire rose between him and the human-faced arachnid. It scorched the air and burned through space. The format of fire. The human-faced arachnid suddenly vanished. It was as if Ren Hong had just woken up from a dream. His left hand instantly raised to his chest, pressing down on the irregular stone talisman outside his priest robe. At the same time, he shouted loudly, "It's attacking me. Tie it down." In the frontline command center, Tian Bang's figure turned from stillness to pounce out. He didn't run towards the main door. Instead, he crashed straight into the outer glass curtain wall. As the glass shards splashed and fell, a human figure ran madly along the nearly vertical curtain wall. Whether it was an ability user or a burner, they all loved to take this kind of shortcut in the metropolis. Tian Bang no longer had any confidence in the effectiveness of the mental smoke from the confrontation on the mental plane. However, the format of fire should be different. Do you want to follow? Cat Eyes sent Luo Nan a private message once more. Luo Nan didn't respond. Right now the area his consciousness touched was gushing with flames, warping the boundary between the material plane and the mental plane. The 5 deep blue walkers were all experienced warriors. Their reactions were nearly synchronized in the face of this sudden crisis. Their combined attack technique revealed a powerful sense of order. While simultaneously warping the material plane and the mental plane, they also had the ability to shape. They built a firm domain barrier that was both offensive and defensive. It was practically the bane of the chaos-type human-faced arachnid. However, the human-faced arachnid they were facing right now was the Wraith sign. It was a special existence controlled by Luo Nan's consciousness. Behind the appearance of chaos, there was actually a strict framework of order that supported it. There were layers of depth that were hard to imagine. The Wraith rune climbed on the floating curtain, and like a spider with thin threads, it easily switched the depth of the mental plane. The shallow zone, the middle zone. Then it jumped back to the shallow zone. In this process of going back and forth, the Wraith sign had already scanned the strict barrier of the format of fire from several dozen different angles. Perhaps it could be described like this. Under the three-dimensional perspective, no matter how tightly the lines were piled up, it was still nothing more than a sheet of paper. The demonic eyes were radiant with color and the 6 colors were bewildering. An incorporeal attack pierced out from the extreme depths of the mental plane. It pierced through the flames as if it was piercing through an illusory bubble. Then came the attack that shocked the soul. Siege Hammer. A deep blue walker froze in a daze. He suddenly sank into unconsciousness, turning into a meaningless steel sculpture. He was no longer able to provide the output of the format of fire. A corner of the curtain of fire warped and shattered in an instant. The high level of order was warped, forcing the other 4 deep blue walkers to readjust the order of their joint attack. But the flaw had already appeared. How difficult would it be to readjust it? The flames of the underground parking lot dimmed quite a bit in an instant. The specter of the human-faced arachnid was already extremely close to the material plane. It flashed within the flames, stepping over the raging flames of the format of fire in a nearly mocking manner. Ah! Fear dominated Ren Hong's movements. His left hand, which had been holding the protective stone slip, suddenly increased its strength, crushing the precious object in his palm to pieces. In an instant, a blood-like thickness and blood-colored radiance flowed out from the cracks of his fingers. The surrounding temperature was actually able to suddenly rise another chunk from the high temperature of the format of fire. The skin and flesh of Ren Hong's palms and fingers were burned to the point of lacerating. But from his perspective, it was still worth it. The air was severely warped, and the distortion was even greater on the mental plane. The high-temperature bloody radiance formed a new and powerful source of interference. The mental curtain that the Wraith sign had hooked earlier swayed and drifted, causing a deviation in the originally chaotic and orderly structure. It affected the Wraith sign's instant positioning. Ren Hong seized this opportunity. His left hand, which was lacerated with flesh, pressed down. He raised his right hand and formed a seal on his lower abdomen. Then he stomped down heavily with one foot, causing the cement floor to split open with a bang. Leaping spiritual radiance sputtered out from the cracks. It was dyed by the bloody radiance that flowed out from the cracks of his fingers, turning it blood red in an instant. Blood, blood, blood. Fire, fire, fire. The praises of hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of people gushed out wrapped in spiritual radiance. Ren Hong slowly knelt on the ground. With a pious posture, he placed the seals formed by his hands down. His palms stuck to the ground and his waist bent down as if he was performing a great salute. The Wraith sign was just about to reorganize its attack, but it was stifled. The Blood Soul Temple within buzzed and trembled. It seemed as if the tip of a pen was scratching on the craggy structure of the mountain. It advanced from bottom to top, layer by layer, transforming into runes. The runes were internalized and quickly formed an enormous restraining force. 80 kilometers away, Luo Nan frowned slightly. Some extremely active elements followed the Blood Soul Temple, followed the Wraith sign, and seeped into the interior of Luo Nan's sealed system. Then it began to grow wildly. Chapter 419. Under the catalysis of Ren Hong's spell power, the Blood Soul Temple underwent a reshaping type of growth. Luo Nan did not know the origins of the protective talisman that Ren Hong crushed. A large amount of highly condensed spell power was accumulated inside. It was used as a seed, and it utilized a secret technique to absorb large amounts of faith power from the believers of the Order through the earth and soil. After being controlled and transformed, the faith power was poured into the Blood Soul Temple in an unending stream. Luo Nan did not understand the specific operating rules, but he could see that the mountain structure of the Blood Soul Temple had become more exquisite and natural. The 4 buildings on top of it grew more magnificent and dignified. As the Blood Soul Temple grew in turmoil, its absorption and devouring of the chaotic power of the Wraith sign became more and more unbridled. It seemed that the parasitic process of several dozen days was about to come to an end. It was currently fusing the human-faced arachnid's power into its own, attempting to devour it and replace its body. Was it not going to walk the remaining several hundred steps of the path of blood and fire? Or could it be said that Ren Hong's rebellion was because he saw another golden path that could forge a perfect sacrificial artifact without going through the human-faced arachnid? Luo Nan did not know what Ren Hong was thinking. But he did know that the effects of this method on his own closed system were quite obvious. It was so obvious that the other believer could sense it. Cat Eyes took the initiative to contact him. "Hey, is the line disturbed? It's very noisy." "Ignore it." Luo Nan urged the human-faced arachnid to rapidly jump within the two-way warped mental screen, leaving the material plane in an instant. The bodyguard, the deep blue walker, lost his connection to the human-faced arachnid and immediately reported, "Target lost." Tian Bang. "Not yet." Ren Hong's hands firmly clasped the rubble in front of his knees, ensuring the stability of the psychic wave radiation. Sweat trickled down his forehead and cheeks, but a smile had already bloomed on his face. "I've locked onto it." "It's locked onto." Luo Nan also confirmed this point. He had already leapt into the middle zone, and he was far away from all devices and mental senses through the warping effect of the mental screen. However, Ren Hong's incantation magic power continued to pour in through the shepherd's channel. Most importantly, the Blood Soul Temple released the element of blood flame as it absorbed energy endlessly. It attempted to assimilate everything in the surroundings to aid in the digestion. It was like red ink in a pool of water. It was not that easy to dilute. Unexpectedly, the contamination was spreading. The Wraith sign was very important within Luo Nan's closed system. It occupied the highest position within all of Luo Nan's believers. It was able to make Luo Nan's power more efficient. And through coupling and other exquisite and subtle functional relationships, it was constantly linked with other believers, transforming into an enormous production line. It produced an unending stream of soul strength, providing abundant supplies for Luo Nan. At this time, one link of the production line was contaminated. In theory, it was possible that the entire production line would be affected. Well, in theory. Luo Nan's mentality was very stable. At this moment, he could see the benefits of seclusion at home last weekend. He already had a relatively clear understanding of the entire formatting theory system. He was using a transcendent perspective to assess the situation. This was because Luo Nan's status in this system was that of a factory owner. In other words, the analogy of pool and red ink was also very appropriate. In an interconnected pool system, the red ink in the upstream pool would pollute the downstream pool, but no matter what, it would be very difficult to go upstream and pollute the source. Luo Nan was the source of the pool system. He was the factory owner who could shut down the production line at any time. Within the closed system he built, this determined the difference between a superior and an inferior position. It determined the absolute control that Luo Nan enjoyed. Even though the power of the Blood Soul Temple followed the internal connections of the closed system and spread endlessly, it was unable to corrode Luo Nan himself no matter what. As for Luo Nan, what he needed to do was very simple. He pressed down with a clear and distinct will, directly severing the coupling connection between the Wraith sign and the other believers. He made the Wraith sign independent. The expansion momentum of the Blood Soul Temple's power was easily severed. It was locked within the Wraith sign's main body area, erasing the last bit of theoretical possibility. The Blood Soul Temple was still engulfing and assimilating the Wraith sign. Under Ren Hong's full power, the momentum was quite fierce. However, this vice ablatum of the Blood Flame Order never realized from beginning to end that the Blood Soul Temple, which he had entrusted his heart's blood and sweat, had already suffered a crushing defeat on a certain level. This was the isolation of the system, the suppression of the hierarchy. When the Wraith sign occupied the magpie's nest, it silently seized the embryonic state of the Blood Soul Temple. This was the result that was destined. Even if the mountain was towering and lofty, how could it compare to the heavens? Right now, the only problem left was the Wraith sign. The Blood Soul Temple's erosion of the Wraith sign continued. It was like retribution for the Wraith sign taking over the mold's nest. Of course, Luo Nan had to control this, but now was not the time. The restless Blood Soul Temple was the real bait. Although Ren Hong's methods were quite effective, the turbulence created on the level of the Blood Soul Temple was far too obvious. It attracted the attention of many related consciousnesses. Luo Nan's closed system senses, including his superior position, just happened to be able to capture all of this. He omitted the meaningless details and traced it in reverse, just like how he had sensed Mrs. Halder before. He drew a few extension lines on the outline of the Blood Soul Temple. It was like drawing auxiliary lines in a plane geometry exercise. It's a very simple assignment. Then I'll get the answer. 1, 2. No, it was a set of twin figures. The Blood Soul Temple was the foundation, extending outwards. The closest one was Renhong. Then it split. A portion involved Tian Bang and a few related people. There was another portion that extended 30 kilometers away. The aura over there was much more familiar. It was clearly Mrs. Halder and the other core members of the Blood Flame Order of Xia City. Of course, this was just physical distance. It was the result of abstraction on the mental plane. The psychic wave figures formed by these two groups of people were actually quite similar. One glance was enough to tell that they came from the same source. The situation is becoming clearer and clearer. Luo Nan's mind grew calmer and calmer. His train of thought began to spring up. In comparison, the Xia City branch of the Blood Flame Order passed through their time in a state of restlessness and depression in the decompression gym 30 kilometers away. Due to their understanding of the Order's techniques, they were able to roughly guess Renhong's methods from the feedback from the Blood Soul Temple. Mo Luan's gloomy thoughts filled the air. That traitor no longer has any misgivings. Yin Luo was even more urgent. She pressed her hand against her chest and faced Mrs. Halder, strongly declaring her position. Boss, let me do it. I can cut off the psychic channel. I absolutely won't let Renhong succeed. And then let all the believers be at a loss as to what to do. If we let them succeed, we'll lose everything. So you want to destroy all the resonators of the Blood Flame will? Destroy the foundation of the Order's existence. Mrs. Halder stared straight at Yin Lu, successfully making her speechless. On the other side, Jiang Yuanjin was still hopping mad. Then what should we do? Our molds were taken away by others just like that. Those shameless separatists. Traitors. Mrs. Halder turned around. She looked at the blurry and lagging projection of information. Several seconds later, she spoke softly, let's leave first. Huh? Jiang Yuanjin didn't hear clearly at first. Mrs. Halder changed her words. We must first cut our losses. We must avoid a crisis that could topple us. Cut our losses. How do we cut our losses? We'll leave Xia City for now. What kind of joke is this? Jiang Yuanjin really exploded. Are you crazy? We haven't even figured out the situation yet, and you want to run? Give up all these years of operation and run? There's no worse situation than the present. Mrs. Halder's tone was calm and without ripples. Old Jiang, you watched Renhong grow up. He's also the most outstanding talent the Order has nurtured in recent years. Don't you trust his judgment? Huh? When it comes to the way Renhong conducts himself, he doesn't have any weaknesses that can be used against him. Given his shrewdness and meticulousness, things like betrayal don't happen. But once they do, there must be a sufficient reason. Perhaps the other party has a closer relationship with the military. Perhaps the other party's prospects for development are broader. But in any case, there must be an enormous disparity in power between the two sides. That's why he made up his mind. Jiang Yuanjin chuckled twice. He wanted to retort that this was all conjecture, but when the words reached his mouth, he suddenly felt dispirited. What Mrs. Halder said was very likely. Renhong's temperament was just like that. Mrs. Halder's gaze swept across everyone. Jiang Yuanjin's mind was absent-minded. Yin Li's mind was restless. Meng Chang's face was expressionless. Wu Kuei shrunk into a corner without a sound. As for Mo Luan, she didn't need to care about him. Mrs. Halder sighed softly and continued, I believe that everyone has the resolve to sacrifice their lives for the Order. But as the first oblatum, the continuation of the orthodoxy and the preservation of our vitality will always be our number one priority. Besides, we have 3 shepherds. As long as the foundation of the herding law doesn't change, we will always have a chance. It doesn't matter if we're in Xia City or not. Jiang Yuanjun wasn't so easily convinced. But I agree with the first ablatum's judgment. Black smoke curled up in spirals in the void. A low and fine voice seemed to seep out from within. Mo Luan's soul body of black smoke was decades old. He practically represented the highest combat power of the Blood Flame Order. His sudden appearance naturally attracted everyone's gazes. However, what people paid more attention to was his attitude. Mo Luan said, ever since the upheaval of the order, the first ablatum has repeatedly proven that her line of thought is correct. She hasn't made any major mistakes to this day. No one could refute this point. The mold was a genius idea. According to the first ablatum's common saying, she found a good project worth investing in. We invested for this and made it to a certain scale. Then, competitors appeared. They directly poached people, stole products, and even used military and political power to destroy bodies. Although it's despicable, it's absolutely impossible to do it without overwhelming strength. We have no chance of victory in a direct clash. Mrs. Halder bowed slightly towards the black smoke in the room to express her thanks. But when her gaze swept across the room, she suddenly frowned. At this moment, the black smoke curled up, faintly forming the silhouette of Mo Luan's figure. Mo Luan's words jumped. In terms of concrete implementation, I have a suggestion. Chapter 420. Right now, a normal investment project has been turned into a hostile takeover by the other party. However, we still hold a certain amount of shares. We can make some changes and turn it into a bet. We'll bet on the ownership of the sacrificial artifact in the future. Elder Mo Luan. Madame Halder's eyes focused and locked onto the coiling black smoke in front of her. From her point of view, this was just a variant of Jiang Yuanjun and Yin Li's irrational argument. We no longer have the capital to raise the stakes. Yes, I do. I just need a little. The shadow of the black smoke soul body pointed at itself. I'm enough. No. Yin Lu and Jiang Yuanjun spoke up at the same time. Yin Lu didn't really understand what Mo Luan meant by bet, but that didn't prevent her from understanding his resolute intentions. She pressed down hard on her chest, almost crushing her heart. You are the order's stabilizing force. No matter what we do, we can't let you charge ahead. You bunch of people. Jiang Yuanjun clenched her fists and waved them as if she was fighting someone. You're making things complicated. Complicated? That's a dream you'll live in forever. An angry rebuke suddenly rose from the black smoke, instantly subduing everyone present. The entire room sank into silence, and the atmosphere froze. After the roar, the condensed black smoke began to drift away. The figure gradually faded, and Mo Luan's voice seemed as soft as smoke. I only have a smattering of the efficient's investment theory. But I know that without a sacrificial artifact or an extraordinary, the Blood Flame Order can't transcend the secular world. Only by following the efficient's train of thought can we continue to exist in this world and continuously accumulate power. Jiang Yuanjun pointed at the black smoke, but in the end, she retracted her arm and clenched her fists. When she opened her mouth again, her voice was hoarse. I've never opposed it. But is the Order's sacrificial artifact and orthodox inheritance also an investment? Or can we withdraw and break even to prevent losses? Madame Halder didn't reply. Mo Luan actually laughed. I don't think about this kind of problem, but you specialize in theory. You should study it further. In a sense, this is your responsibility. At this point, Mo Luan turned his attention to Lady Halder. Lord Officiant, I agree to retreat, but things happened too quickly. My body is still immersed in the frozen liquid and can't move. It will take some time for it to thaw. Madame Halder shook her head. According to the relevant contingency plans, we have a complete evacuation plan. The relevant vehicle is right next to your seclusion room. It will only take 15 minutes for the transfer to be completed, and it will last for more than 7 days. By that time we had reached Tyre and settled down again. We can start now. As he spoke, a new wave of information refreshed, and the intelligence peddler took out even more valuable information. He had secretly hacked into the building's surveillance system and borrowed the surveillance camera in a corner of the underground parking lot to spy on the area in the distance. From the surveillance screen, one could see a blood-red spiritual light spurting out from the end of the dark domain, as well as a slight spatial tremor. Jiang Yuanjin muttered, "It has already reached this level." In the next moment, it was as if he had woken up from a dream. Anger once again dominated his thoughts. He is pulling up seedlings to help them grow. If he continues to forge the blood-fire path like this, the foundation of the Blood-Soul Temple will be destroyed by him. Lady Halder looked at the projection and said softly, "Perhaps he has an even better idea." "What?" "Boss." Lu felt the violent tremors coming from the mold. Combining it with the surveillance screen, she had already made a judgment. Ren Hong is forcefully transferring the priority of the shepherd. If we do not follow up, the Blood-Soul Temple will be his in 20 minutes. Meng Chong, who had been standing solemnly, spoke for the first time. His voice was heavy. Ren Hong has been overdrawing on the believer's psyche power. This way, even if we want to counterattack in the future, we will not be able to gather enough psyche power for the ritual in a short period of time. Jiang Yuanjin gasped, "If he is ruthless enough, he will continue to make this kind of consumption, forever maintaining the first move advantage." "Lord Officiant." Madame Halder didn't say a word, but without any warning, she waved her arm towards where Mo Luan's black smoke soul body was. Her fingertips brushed past, and the black smoke disappeared, leaving only nothingness. Lu and the others were stunned. In the next moment, Mo Luan's voice echoed in the nothingness. "The basic purpose of the bet is to know all their cards." Ren Hong, Tian Bang, and what else? Lu suddenly came to a realization and ordered through her wristband, "Connect Elder Mo Luan to the seclusion room." A minute later, the security personnel outside sent a message, trembling with fear. It was unknown when, but the personnel in charge of daily service and security work beside Elder Mo Luan had all fainted. The relevant scene was also transmitted back at the same time. It was taken after the robot had entered the seclusion area. It could be seen that the door of the seclusion room under layers of defense was opened, and the frozen liquid pool inside was already empty. Jiang Yuanjin groaned, "Blood flame above. Blood flame above." Ren Hong knelt in the protection area of the incantation. Although his spirit was excited, his physical strength was close to exhaustion. He was an outstanding blood flame priest, and he had a deep understanding of the mold and the subtle changes in the Blood-Soul Temple. It is currently not normal, and its instinct to avoid danger is too strong. It is a chaotic species, and should not react to the changes in its body. Tian Bang's high-speed descent was about to end, and the current situation was still under control. He was in the mood to chat. "I feel that guy's intelligence is not normal." "It has no intelligence." "Is that so?" "I don't care about the conclusions of your research, but I saw that this guy attacked several times, and every time it hit the weak point. It hit the sore spot, and it came and went at will. It made the well-trained deep blue walkers lose face. What kind of monster have you raised with your herding?" "It is a mold, a mold." "All right, mold." Tian Bang's voice suddenly cut off, and his gaze focused on the bottom of the building. The traffic was piled up there, and because the security department had already restricted access, the underground parking lot could only be left, but not entered. It was quite chaotic. And there was a person coming out of a taxi amidst the chaotic flow of people and traffic. He was dressed in very formal attire, like a white-collar worker returning to work overtime. But his pace was sluggish, and he still had the leisure to look up after coming out of the congested traffic. His gaze streaked across the glass curtain wall of Aurora Cloud City, and also across the blurred intersection of light and shadow, and the rapidly descending Tian Bang. The two's gazes intersected, and they saw each other's faces. The person downstairs looked to be a middle-aged man in his 50s. His figure was thin, and his face was pale, as if he was ill. But there was clearly a flame burning in his pupils. The flame had also left a clear mark on the mental plane. Everyone flipped the cards, or flipped the table. Tian Bang's eyebrows twitched, more impulsive than expected, and better at finding opportunities. In just a moment of distraction, all that was left was the meaningless street scene below. The person had already entered the building, and his aura was immediately concealed. Tian Bang let out a breath, and spoke through the public channel. Mo Luan is here, have you prepared the plan? He came in a taxi. The frontline command center immediately exploded, activating E-Plan, Mo Luan's body condition monitoring, codenamed Onyx Soul. Team 5, Team 6 control the underground area, long-range attacks are the first priority, Team 5 in position. Onyx Soul in position. Onyx Soul has entered the first floor of the underground parking lot. Yin Yang Eye System, turn on. This Yin Yang Eye system was a monitoring device that integrated many different wave detection. It did not have many methods to deal with spirit bodies, but as long as there was a physical body, the effect was still alright. Currently, what appeared on the front finger center's screen were mostly transparent human figures, representing normal people. The spirit waves emitted by the burners and ability users on their side were displayed in green light. And in this background, there was a blurry red dot, disappeared. Tian Bang looked at the monitoring screen from afar, and his eyelids twitched. Hey! Determined that Onyx Soul is moving at high speed, system delay. All entrances and exits have been sealed, unable to determine if Onyx Soul has entered the spirit body state. Ding! This was the electronic sound of the elevator in position. Even though they knew that the target would not take the elevator, but in this sudden situation, the tactical squad that was searching nearby, instinctively turned their guns. When the elevator door opened, a pair of affectionate couples appeared. Yeah. The two faces instantly became frightened, the man sat on the ground, and the woman curled up and screamed. The scene was an awkward scene. Why is the elevator not locked? It's already locked, but the control system malfunctioned just now. Tian Bang followed the path that Mo Luan took to enter the building, and followed along. This is not strange, during Mo Luan's third war, he was a mechanic soldier. This is just a joke. Also, he told us that the evacuation work was done badly. Perhaps, Mo Luan did not mind using this point. This sentence, Tian Bang did not say it out loud. At this moment, on the first floor of the underground parking lot, the soldier in charge of the search mission stepped on an area. The touch was very subtle, very soft. Walala. The melted reinforced concrete collapsed, and there was an even more muffled sound below. A hole about 60 centimeters in diameter appeared on the floor. Did it sink from here? There seems to be more below. The tactical flashlight's beam pierced down, all the way to the third underground floor. Is this an Earth escape? The deputy in charge of the tactical deployment said with a sneer, and then confirmed, Fragrant Bait 3 is certainly his primary target. 6th underground floor, pay attention. Yes, Senior Colonel. 6th underground floor, under the blood-red spirit light, Ren Hongmu was expressionless. In the next moment, his forehead touched the ground, and he used an even more focused posture to lead the process of the ceremony. The rumbling sound of the Deep Blue Walker's engine reverberated in the underground space, and the aftermath was introduced, causing dust to rustle and fall. In the darkness, Mo Luan's hand held onto a pillar, and he looked at the back of his own hand with protruding joints. The veins on the surface were exposed, and there was a layer of dense sweat. Fortunately, there were no age spots and the like that commonly seen at this age. Often in the freezing liquid pool, his body's appearance was well maintained, and he was even a bit younger than his actual age. But the situation under the skin, only he knew. Chapter 421. In the parking lot, there were all kinds of vehicles neatly arranged in three-dimensional frames. They were densely packed. In fact, apart from the first and sixth floors of the underground parking lot, the rest belonged to the field of mechanical automation. Only technicians and maintenance personnel could enter. The space here was narrow and the deep blue walkers couldn't fully display their abilities. It was a good rest stop. Mo Luan really liked the smell of engine oil here. It made him feel as if he had returned to his youth. However, the psychological inertia of middle-aged and old people still existed. These young people in the army, Mo Luan's heart was on guard before he finished speaking. "I've let you down, senior." Tian Bang walked out from behind a pillar at the back. His shadow covered nearly his entire body. Only his pupils were bright like burning flames. No matter when or what group, the individuals are always uneven. Ha! Mo Luan sighed and continued walking forward. "We should be able to reach the 6th floor. Tian Bang unhurriedly followed. "There's nothing bad about this. Senior only used 4 floors to adapt to this body that hasn't been used for a long time. The rest is probably just to save strength." As he walked past the place where Mo Luan had previously stood, Tian Bang jumped up and touched the ceiling with his fingertips. His tentacles didn't change at all. This made him even more certain of his judgment. This is the legendary Black Soul body, right? Using the Black Smoke Soul body to wrap around the corporeal body and form a special form that intervenes the mental and material planes. Unfortunately, the consumption is too great. This is an ability prepared for extraordinaries. If it was 10 years earlier, if there wasn't any hesitation, if there wasn't internal strife, the voices of the two overlapped to a large extent, but in the end they were completely different. They stopped at the same time. The straight line distance between leather shoes and sneakers didn't exceed 10 meters. Tian Bang smiled in the shadows and met Mo Luan's serious face after he turned around. Approximately 2 seconds later, the corner of Tian Bang's lips continued to split open, revealing a few white teeth. "Perhaps I should change my way of thinking. Senior, have you never thought that according to your current realm, if you had a powerful energy furnace that could provide you with an unending stream of strength?" His voice was cut off. What cut off his words was Mo Luan's gloomy and ice-cold gaze. However, a gaze couldn't kill, at least it was ineffective against Tian Bang. He quickly raised his hand with a rich and subtle expression. "I'm sorry. My natural disposition is frank. I've always felt that it was a pity that you chose a side in the past. If we followed the binding method, perhaps everyone would have opened up a new path a long time ago, instead of struggling for an ethereal possibility like now." "Oh, the Thai control faction. Back when the faction split, your voices were quite loud. It's bigger now." In the outer region, when Tian Bang and Mo Luan were talking, they didn't stop for even a moment. The frontline command center dispatched the 2 teams of deep blue walkers responsible for the underground region to urgently shift their defenses. They set up instruments and weapons and completely sealed off the entire underground parking lot. As for the resulting chaos, well, an earthquake was a good reason. The emergency evacuation of the building had begun, but to send all the civilians to safety in just a few minutes was still a difficult task that could not be completed. But this did not prevent Tian Bang from making a conclusion: the current faction of restraint is no longer the same as before. The so-called orthodoxy now is also very different from the past. Senior, you're doing something meaningless, and the chances of success are close to zero. The distance of 10 meters between Tian Bang and Mo Luan seemed to be 1, but in fact, it was only covered with a layer of dark curtain. The inside was divided by layers of steel frames, vehicles, and pillars. It was cramped and oppressive. In addition to Mo Luan and Tian Bang's confrontational aura, not even a bug could probe inside. "It's about to explode." Luo Nan had placed most of his energy here on the mental plane. From his perspective, the result here was even more important than the change in the Blood Soul Temple. Cat Eyes was still performing her duties as a broadcaster. She synchronized the scene from the command center to the mission window on the psychic wave network. Aside from the shared video, the window was completely blank. Everyone was already unable to discuss. The atmosphere grew more and more oppressive. It was just as Luo Nan had determined, it could explode at any moment. On the other hand, Renhong's eyelids were still drooping. He was chanting a secret incantation and maintaining the ritual. He was racing against time. But was he really not paying attention? That might not be the case. I'm very grateful that you didn't directly judge me as the loser. Mo Luan spat out truly meaningless words from his mouth. He felt that there was no need to continue like this. He unbuttoned his formal suit and loosened his cuffs. He stretched out his arms a few times. I have a general idea. Oh. Allow me to release a map cannon. The greatest problem of today's youngsters, or perhaps I should say the generations after the war, is that they believe they control everything. They don't understand fear. He took off his shirt as he spat out the last word. His sleeves fluttered, and the fluttering shadow instantly transformed into a black mist that was even denser than the current environment. It spread out like a black cloud, assaulting everyone's faces. Cliché. Nothing new. This was Tian Bang's evaluation of Mo Luan's speech. He crossed his arms in front of his chest. He didn't make any obvious movements. He just tilted his head, wanting to bypass the range of the black mist. But all he saw was that the black mist and black clouds had already filled the parking lot on the 5th floor. The steel frame and the car body made strange hissing noises. As for Mo Luan himself, he had already disappeared without a trace. 5th team, 6th team in position. Reactivate the Yin Yang Eye. Senior Colonel Meng Tu led 2 small teams of deep blue walkers into the underground parking lot on the 6th floor. He was Tian Bang's assistant in the Special Forces Brigade. He was responsible for commanding the enemy. Right now, Tian Bang had no intention of giving orders, so he continued to carry out his duties. From Meng Tu's perspective, Tian Bang was keeping watch on the 5th floor. It was impossible for the attacking Mo Luan to perfectly conceal his aura. Moreover, this person definitely had Ren Hong as his primary target. Got him. The facts proved his judgment. The Yin Yang Eye was in full effect. It locked onto the general range of the target and connected to the fire control system. It allowed the 2 teams of 15 deep blue walkers to form a network of long-range weapons, ready to fire. But the opening shot was still Meng Tu's favorite weapon. Prepare the format cannon. 5th and 6th team coordinate. 4th team reserve. Coordinate level 1, level 2. Meng Tu placed the barrel that looked like a rocket launcher on his shoulder. The format fire burned fiercely behind his body. He relied on his outstanding perception and control ability to coordinate the formatting power of a dozen companions. Then he concentrated and amplified it through the special barrel on his shoulder. Receive the Iron Fist of Justice. Meng Tu continued to open the way with cold jokes, but he was extremely serious. He had been teased by Mo Luan just now. Now he was going to take revenge. The muzzle of the cannon sprayed out with a flash, forming a conical beam of light as it left the chamber. The front of the cannon rapidly expanded, while the edges pulsed with a blazing white flame. The beam of light instantly broke through the ceiling in front of him, covering an area of nearly 100 square meters. It completely engulfed the target determined by the Yin Yang Eye system. Over 100 streaks of flames erupted from the floor of the 5th floor of the parking lot. They collided with the pervasive black mist and immediately detonated a powerful shockwave, warping the vehicles and steel frames above. It caused over 100 steel constructs to deform and disintegrate, sending car parts flying in all directions. Luo Nan also noticed the great eruption of the format of fire from the depths of the mental plane. TSK. The property management company will cry. Tian Bang stood at the edge of the format of fire in sync with him. The flames practically licked his face. He just grinned and shook his head. The government's trust in us is pretty much finished. Meng Tu was disinclined to respond. From his perspective, the bombardment of the ceiling had already warped and deformed. Flames seeped through, forming a vast space covered and controlled by the format of fire. The so-called revenge wasn't his goal. What he truly wanted to do was to project out the highly coordinated and resonant format of fire. He wanted to form a unique domain that could melt away all supernatural abilities. Within this domain, any body was of no use. As long as one wasn't an extraordinary, they would be forcefully pulled down from the mysterious and bizarre plane and returned to the real, ordinary world. Maintain resonance. Meng Tu emphasized and encouraged his subordinates once more. Everyone's formats must resonate. Perhaps our individual combat strength is lacking, but as long as we maintain this state, all ability users will flee at the mere sight of us. Pointing forward, Cat Eyes raised an eyebrow. He's a standard chauvinist. Can I sue him for discrimination? Zhu Ling just pretended not to hear. On the other hand, Luo Nan was somewhat vigilant. From his perspective, Tian Bang's deputy had fired the format of fire through the coordinated resonance of over a dozen burners. The format of fire had practically burned through all of the curtains of the shallow zone and the middle zone of the mental plane. The area involved in its attack and defense was vast and tight like never before. If the format of fire was raised by 1 or 2 levels, it would touch upon the deep zone or even the abyss zone or the polar domain. Mentally enhanced ability users would certainly be unable to avoid it. They could only meet force with force. To wrestle with a dozen or even a few dozen burners? That would truly be courting death. He absolutely had to be careful of this move in the future. He couldn't control his own ability and play with fire. Luo Nan nearly missed a crucial detail in his momentary daze. Tian Bang, who was the closest, was the first to discover that something was wrong. His gaze swept across the floor of the 5th floor, and he saw that it was greatly warped and cracked. The cracks had already affected the steel frame that supported it, making strange creaking noises. The sound was so ominous that it caused Meng Tu, who was on the 6th floor, to raise his head in astonishment. It didn't make sense. The format of fire mainly ablated the mental plane. The initial explosive power had collided with Mo Luan's black mist at the juncture of the mental and the material plane, forming a shockwave. The intensity was far from enough to destroy the main structure of the underground parking lot. But now, sparks and electric currents weaved through the floor between the 5th and 6th floors. Glaring cracks appeared one after another, and they were no longer just in the area covered by the format of fire. They were rapidly spreading throughout the entire floor. This momentum. Level 1 cave-in response. Just as the command appeared in the tactical channel, a large piece of the floor came crashing down along with the steel bars. The rumble exploded, and the lights dimmed for a time. Rubble rained down like rain. What was even more terrifying was that several ton heavy vehicles and steel frames came crashing down. The enormous impact seemed to cause the entire building to sway. It even brought along large pieces of the floor to come crashing down. It came crashing down like the sky was collapsing and the earth was caving in. It was as if doomsday had arrived. There were 3 squads of deep blue walkers on the 6th floor, and nearly 20 exoskeleton armors. Every single one of them was proficient in joint attacks. But when faced with the collapsing floor, any joint attacks were useless. Chapter 422. This was far too exaggerated. Luo Nan couldn't help but switch to a perspective that was closer to the material plane. He wanted to experience the grand scene of the entire floor collapsing. The originally stable structure collapsed in an instant. Hundreds and thousands of tons of heavy objects poured down in torrents, practically erasing all living space. Such a scene was quite shocking. He instinctively thought, 20 little deep blue walkers and that Ren Hong. They weren't all crushed to death, right? Oh. It doesn't seem that easy. An explosive rumble shook the 10-ton steel frame and the fixed body of the car were sent flying. Deep Blue Walkers Team 4, who were responsible for the protection mission, appeared with Ren Hong in the center, covered in dirt and grime. The 6 Deep Blue Walkers were able to maximize the use of their exoskeletons in the critical moment just now. They also borrowed the large falling steel frame to prop up a safe space. Such an astute and effective response was worthy of applause and praise. However, 2 deep blue walkers of Team 4 fell to the ground in a short few seconds. Their auras rapidly weakened. The frontline command center received a message at the same time: Strong 3 and Strong 5 of Team 4 have been injected with Thunderfire. Requesting the use of inhibitors. Permission to immediately use inhibitors. Privileges have been unlocked. Injection complete. Medics will arrive in 45 seconds. Please open up the passageway ahead of time. Let's not talk about the price and chaos on this side. The blood-red light still existed in the center of Team 4's defense. However, the light swayed and scattered. Blood overflowed from the corner of Renhong's mouth and nose. His scalp was smashed and blood flowed down his forehead. He was in an extremely sorry state. It was clear that in order to protect this source of spiritual light, he had paid a heavy price. Renhong wasn't as calm and collected as before under these circumstances. He didn't care about his injuries at all. He just spread open his arms and did his best to gather the light. At the same time, he roared in a low voice, "Give me time. I need time." Tian Bang was already pouncing toward Nagua before Renhong's roar could ring out. He also believed that Renhong would be Mo Luan's first target. Not to mention anything else, just the destruction of the Shepherd's Privilege transfer ceremony was a tangible result for the Bloodflame Orthodox faction. However, Tian Bang didn't expect that Mo Luan would actually play with such a large hand. He directly caused a floor of the underground parking lot to collapse. He relied on weight and gravity to stun the 3 well-trained deep blue walkers on the spot. As expected, this kind of veteran was the most troublesome. Before Meng Tu and the others could regroup, Tian Bang had to fulfill his responsibility as the chief powerhouse and commander and build a temporary line of defense for Renhong. In the time it took to think, Tian Bang had already crossed a pile of steel ruins and approached the 4th defense line. He was about to enter it, but he felt an inexplicable chill in his heart. He didn't need to turn his head to know that there was black smoke and fire burning behind him. Mo Luan, who had disappeared at the beginning of the collapse of the building, seemed to have appeared out of thin air from the darkness of nothingness. When did you get to the back? The meaningless and distracting thoughts were washed away in a flash. Tian Bang didn't make a sound and still didn't turn his head. Only the format of fire burst forth from his body. Fiery smoke surged straight into the depths of the spiritual plane, suppressing the tangible and intangible impact from the other side. On the material plane, the flames and the black fog collided and intertwined on a distorted surface. A large cloud of dust rose from the ruins. Then, the shockwave from the collision came. A strangle-like spirit wave tornado rose and cut the nearby steel frames and vehicle frames into pieces. At this moment, the destructive power of the 2 B+ rank powerhouses was clearly displayed. The splashing fragments of the aftermath were also quite troublesome. Each fragment was comparable to a large-caliber rifle bullet. Even though they wore exoskeleton armor, they didn't dare to take a few hits. Team 5 and Team 6, who were attempting to encircle and regroup, were forced away once more. The unluckiest was still Team 4. They were practically at the center of the explosion, and they had to take care of Renhong and the 2 wounded. The remaining 4 could only mobilize the format of fire with all their might and pull large stone slabs to use as temporary shields. They built a broken fort. Their reactions were already at their limits. The aftermath of the storm swept through several hundred square meters of space in the ruins at practically the same time. A few deep blue walkers gritted their teeth and withstood the whistling sound wave. Yet another person was struck by successive fragments. He was unlucky enough to be hit in a weak spot on his outer bones. The format of fire was unable to effectively defend against it, and he immediately collapsed with a spray of blood. Renhong spat out another mouthful of blood behind the barrier that was leaking air and sand. The spiritual light that gushed out from the ground was abnormal. It was like pouring oil onto a fire. The dazzling radiance burst forth in an instant, nearly engulfing him. Even his priest robes began to burn without fire. Luo Nan felt like he was watching a large-scale New Year's Eve fireworks show right now. He couldn't help but want to find someone to talk to. It's truly spectacular. Cat Eyes looked at the chaotic scene in the frontline command center. She didn't respond. She maintained her restrained silence. Luo Nan didn't really want to hear her answer. The changes to the Blood Soul Temple were still ongoing. The embryonic form of the altar could already be seen on the peak of the mountain. Ren Hong was using intense methods to forcefully push the Blood Soul Temple into the final few hundred steps of the path of blood and fire. He was also seizing the authority of the number one shepherd. He was worthy of attention. However, Luo Nan was gradually getting used to the perspective of the system. Ren Hong's efforts were far from being able to pierce through the clear sky above the Blood Soul Temple. Most of its significance was erased. In comparison, it was more meaningful to project the twin diagrams, namely the conflict between the orthodox faction of Blood Flame sect and the restraining faction. But even so, this was no longer the crucial segment. The 2B+ rank experts had already forcefully shifted the center of the whirlpool of conflict away from the instant Mo Luan and Tian Bang fought. After all, this was a world where strength spoke. Yes, this was a world determined by cognition. Luo Nan attentively watched the two experts collide. He quietly waited for the inevitable moment. The shockwave covered several hundred square meters, raising a large expanse of smoke and mist. The majority of lighting equipment had already been lost in the ruins of the 5th and 6th floors. The darkness and the dust made it impossible to see anything clearly. However, the two combatants no longer needed the guidance of light. They had already locked onto each other's energies and were colliding with each other on the mental plane. They had lost any information, but it was impossible for them to lose the existence of the other. Tian Bang was a bit distracted. He quickly glanced at the brightest source of light in the ruins before him. It was the psychic glow of Ren Hong's believers. But in this instant of distraction, a terrifying wind pressure brought a sense of danger and smashed over. It was the wreckage of a car that flew through the air at high speeds. Tian Bang didn't dodge. He raised his elbow and waved his arm, sending the wreckage of the car, which was wrapped in terrifying kinetic energy, flying away. The wreckage smashed into the unsteady mountain of ruins a dozen meters away. "Senior, you're too reckless." "Really? I thought I would be the one to say those words." Mo Luan's figure was hidden. He was like a ghost. It was impossible to tell if he was mentally or physically. The black smoke and flames possessed astonishing corrosiveness. Even Tian Bang, a cyborg life form, didn't dare to directly touch them. "Ha!" Tian Bang exhaled and shouted. The format of fire erected a high wall. Black smoke burned within the screen of fire that sprayed out, yet Mo Luan's indistinct face appeared. He smiled at Su Yangyi and then vanished. Fighting and running wasn't an option. Counterattack. Tian Bang's figure instantly changed from moving backwards to pouncing forward without any delay. However, an astonishing rumble and tremor rang out once more. An enormous steel frame and car came pouring down from the ruins a second time. This might not be the 5th floor's stock. The 3 floors above the underground parking lot weren't looking good either. This underground space was done for. Tian Bang came to a halt. He deeply felt that tonight's situation was getting bigger and bigger. Moreover, it had already exceeded the scope of all his plans. It was sliding in the most uncontrollable direction. At the frontline command center, the person in charge of the government's security department, who had always been willing to play a supporting role, couldn't sit still. After receiving a few calls, he couldn't help but loudly warn, "Major General Tian, this is Cloud City Water Village. It's a flourishing area where over 100,000 people reside. I repeat, this is a metropolis, not the wilderness." The continuous large-scale upheavals definitely couldn't be concealed. In particular, the underground parking lot was sealed off and there were sounds of the entire floor collapsing. Even the earthquake station had to make an announcement. Although they had followed the form of an earthquake warning earlier and carried out an evacuation, the contradictory elements were not so easy to explain. If this situation continued to develop, it would clearly be another Frost River reality terrorist attack. And this time, the main character was the military. The person in charge of the security department slammed the table with a bang. Tian Bang was also in a bad mood. "You're trying to throw the blame at this time." Mo Luan's mocking face flashed faintly in the darkness. Another round of cannon shots came. "That's why I said that the most fatal weakness of the post-war generations is that they take things for granted." Tian Bang curled his lips. "Last time you said, they don't understand reverence." The meaning is similar, right? Senior, do you really need to play such a big game? Separated by the steel frame and the rubble, the two began to chat. In fact, they both had their own misgivings. They were pondering over the other's strong points and weak points in order to quickly accomplish something. Right now, the distance between the two was not far. It was about the same as when they first met. They were both around 10 meters apart. Mo Luan was sitting on a piece of rubble. His back was half bent, and his elbows were resting on his knees. He seemed a bit tired, but he also seemed calm and composed. He was like many old soldiers. He began to brag about his military accomplishments in his free time and gave pointers to the younger generation. The most ruthless part of war is street fighting. In the 3 wars, the red-eyed enemy soldiers and the mutants that wreak havoc don't care if you're in a bustling city. Destruction and slaughter are the first things that everyone adapts to. How many of the metropolises of the world are left from before the war? Haven't they all turned into ruins? How far have we gotten? Destruction was what these old soldiers were most proficient at. Mo Luan didn't mind emphasizing this point and adding a bit more pressure to Tian Bang. There was a smile on his face. One of his eyes was tranquil, and the other was callous. "Young man, look at more of the video material from the past. There's nothing bad about it." Tian Bang also smiled. "Understood, senior. But allow me to show some concern. It seems like you're 2 kilograms lighter." "Oh." Tian Bang extended 2 fingers. He didn't care if Mo Luan could see them in the darkness or through the rubble. "Senior, compared to a minute and 40 seconds ago, you're 2 kilograms lighter. It's normal to lose weight in high-intensity battles, but this extent is too great." And then... Chapter 423. Facing Tian Bang's question, Mo Luan patted off the dust on his shoulder and answered, "If your weight is lower than 40 kilograms, you can more or less help me collect my corpse. But it doesn't matter, there are definitely people who are in a worse mood." As soon as he finished speaking, he roared, "Mo Luan." The voice came from Ren Hong. Behind the temporary fortress, the priest who had betrayed the control faction smashed his fists heavily on the ground, smashing the already cracked ground into pieces. However, the spiritual light that was burning like a bonfire in front of him turned into smoke, and there was no follow-up. Tian Bang was fine, but his deputy, Meng Tu, who was rushing over, felt as if his head had been hit by an invisible hammer. The ritual was destroyed. When? Under Mo Luan's body was a relatively flat front cover of a vehicle. It was just that there was a slight incline and it was leaning forward. This made him bend his body even more. The ceremony requires attitude, and the result is a race against time. That's it. It's still early. Ren Hong's hoarse voice echoed in the ruins. It's not over yet. Mo Luan exhaled and faced the steel frame ruins in front of him. He laughed softly and said, "Yeah, you're actually a shepherd. But the nourishment you've secretly collected all these years has already been poured into it. I am willing to sacrifice for the Blood Soul Temple." Ren Hong's breathing became more rapid. He raised his hoarse voice, "As long as the Blood Soul Temple is here, and I am here, I have not failed. I am the true defender of the Blood Flame Will." Mo Luan shook his head. As long as life exists, the Blood Flame will exist. It never needs to be defended. What we need to defend are the laws and wisdom that we communicate with the Blood Flame Will. Mo Luan, are you preaching doctrines to me? All these years, you've been hypnotizing yourself to kneel and lick that woman's toes. You old fool, you're just a mascot used by that businesswoman to preserve her value. You're no different from Jiang Yuan. Is that so? Then let me remind you, Jiang Yuanjin can be considered your adoptive father. That's right, but that doesn't change the fact that he's that woman's mascot. In that woman's eyes, there is only a return on investment. The teachings and the followers are all tools that can be replaced at any time. Now it's your turn. I'm more proactive than you think. He ended the conversation with one sentence. At this time, the tactical flashlight beam swept across the ruins, revealing Mo Luan's vague figure. Mo Luan did not dodge, facing the light and raising 3 fingers. Today, I have a total of 3 goals: to look at my cards, to stop my losses, and to turn the tables. I'm too old to think too much. I can give myself 100 points for completing any one of them. I'm already considering the possibility of exceeding the quota. The beam of light occasionally swept across his face, catching a rare smile on his usually stern face. Through the gap between the steel frame and the car, Tian Bang saw this scene and stared at it. 3 seconds later, he looked away and looked. And Lin Tian Luan Jing's. His gaze pierced through the darkness, and he saw that the outer layer of his hoodie and the inner layer of his t-shirt had been charred black. Tian Bang's hands and feet didn't move, but the format of fire flickered and trembled. These few areas were thoroughly incinerated, revealing small damaged holes all the way to his pectoral muscles. One could see that there was a slight scorch mark on his skin, and no matter how the format of fire shook, it couldn't be removed. Tian Luan had indeed been injured by the Black Soul Body's attack. In that instant confrontation, Mo Luan was as illusory as a ghost, but the killing intent that had reached his chest was real. It was only a few centimeters away from his heart. Look at cards, stop losses, turn the tables. You said you only needed to complete 1, but in reality, you're quite greedy, senior. No, I'm going to puke if you keep being so hypocritical. Therefore, Tian Bang patted his chest and grinned at the other side of the ruins. Old soldier, you're so annoying. Before his voice even fell, a beam of light radiated. Mo Luan's pupils slightly contracted. The intertwining tactical flashlight beam was unable to affect his perception, but separated by the thick steel frame and the body of the car, the sudden burst of intense flame light pierced straight into his eyes. The chaotically piled ruins in front of him seemed to distort in the intense light. No, it was truly distorting. Like so, thousands of light beams tore through all obstructions within 10 meters of space. Like a sun exploding in a black prison, the blazing and chaotic radiance poured out in torrents. The ruins beneath everyone's feet undulated like waves. Every tiny pore was flooded with intense light. The tens of thousands of square meters of ruins were as bright as day for a time. It had been a long time since Mo Luan's eyes had felt sore, but now he instinctively half-closed his eyelids. His black soul body also twisted the boundary between spirit and matter with all its might, weakening the instantaneous burst of intense light as much as possible. At this moment, a strange, chi-chi sound scattered through the ruins. The black smoke wrapped around his body flowed out at the same time, including his aura that had always been united as one. This obliterating power and the domain constructed by the format of fire had been famous for a long time. Format domain. Legend had it that the ability closest to extraordinary was able to reformat almost all extraordinary powers. Under normal circumstances, 5 to 7 tactical teams of deep blue walkers were often required to join hands in order to achieve this. Tian Bang had used his own strength to complete the setup. He hadn't even worn an exoskeleton armor. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to judge his strength as AB+ rank. The opponent has revealed his cards, and Mo Luan tried to turn his body into nothingness again in order to avoid the frontal assault. In the past, he could change in the blink of an eye. But now, under the cover of the format domain, the operation of his black soul body was also affected. There was a clear stagnation. Forcefully changing would only lead to unpredictable consequences. With a thought, Mo Luan formed a seal with his arms, covering the vital parts of his face and chest. He assumed the most thorough defensive posture. This was the judgment made by his 50 years of fighting instincts. His beating heart and boiling blood were already enough to prove that a crisis was imminent. He didn't need any more reasons. In the next moment, Tian Bang's undisguised malevolent eyes appeared in Mo Luan's blurry vision. He pounced. Just like in the last round of confrontation, Mo Luan had gotten close to Tian Bang. Tian Bang had now instantly pulled the distance between him and Mo Luan to nothingness. He was too close. What was completely different from the last time was that Mo Luan's black soul body was severely restricted under the cover of the format domain. He had to first forcefully distort and destroy the domain's effect before he could erupt. No matter how hard his fist was, it would lose its impact force after passing through a dozen or so layers of sponge cushions. Fortunately, after Tian Bang had set up the format domain, he had also cut off the possibility of using his extraordinary strength. Moreover, he wasn't wearing any armor, so he didn't need to care about the corresponding sophisticated weapons. He could only rely on his fists to do the talking. Mo Luan had completely given up on the idea of projecting his internal energy. He was prepared to use his old bones in conjunction with his well-honed skills to block Tian Bang's body of steel. But at this moment, a high temperature that could burn the soul pounced on him. It burned away the thin black mist on the surface of his body and penetrated his flesh and bones. Moreover, fire and smoke surged up on the mental plane and instantly turned into an exploding cloud of smoke. For a moment, whether it was his mental senses or his eyes, everything was covered by a monstrous bloody light. Immediately after, an expanding claw occupied his entire field of vision and smashed towards his face. Mo Luan heard a tide-like roar, blood, blood, blood. Chapter 424. In Mo Luan's perception, the oncoming giant claw seemed to seize all the air between his nose and mouth. The cloud of flames and smoke on the mental plane even more so drowned out his subtle perception of the surrounding area. At this very moment, Mo Luan had already lost the initiative. His 6 senses, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and will, were completely restricted and affected by the opponent. Therefore, when he heard that deafening howl, he felt the entire skyscraper tremble. Stone slabs and steel frames continued to tumble down from above the twisted ruins, as if they could bring about an even more complete collapse at any time. But all of this couldn't compare to the brilliant flower of blood and fire blossoming within the formatting domain that radiated radiance in all directions. Blood flame, willpower. This thought was like lightning, followed by a thunderous sound like a chariot being run over. It really was run over. The power that instantly surged over was as familiar as Mo Luan's own breathing, but that kind of tyrannical rejection and erosion was like the most thorough rejection, isolating him outside of the domain that should have belonged to him. That was really against the rules. Mo Luan was somewhat inexplicably moved. Right now his arms were crossed in front of him, already assuming the most complete defensive stance. But when the claw smashed down on his face, his arm bones were like 2 charcoal rods that had already been burnt through, snapping with a crisp sound. Whether it was the black soul body that could shift through the void, or his well-tempered technique, all of it had become a meaningless joke. And Tian Bang's claw, which still had 99% of its strength remaining, directly pressed down on his head. In a blur, Mo Luan's line of sight faintly penetrated the spread fingers, once again seeing Tian Bang's malevolent and violent features. A tyrannical willpower pierced straight into his brain, die. It was as if a high-energy bomb had exploded in the air. The ruins, which had already been chaotic to the extreme, collapsed a second time under the powerful light of the format of fire. Enormous amounts of stone and steel fragments shot backwards in a circular arc, suddenly setting off a storm of death. Danger! His deputy, Senior Colonel Meng Tu, practically fell forward like a hungry dog scrambling for shit. The members of the combat squad that had gathered over were doing the same. Their method was extremely correct. Otherwise, the high-speed flying fragments could penetrate their exoskeleton armors in an instant, tearing their bodies to pieces. The commanding officer, who was filled with killing intent, would not shed a single tear for such an unlucky person. After the terrifying eruption, the glaring luminosity within the ruins began to decrease. Most people would still see dusky darkness before their eyes at this time, but the deep blue walkers had powerful physiques and the tactical helmets to filter the light. They quickly adapted to the ambient light and saw the layer of black mist within the light waves. Ren Hong was almost blinded by the glaring light earlier. He instinctively closed his eyes and even reached out to block it. Right now, he was barely able to lift his eyelids and couldn't help but tear up. He was in an extremely sorry state. But he couldn't care less about this. He stared blankly at the ruins that were nearly 100 square meters in front of him. It was only after a long while that his mind finally worked. Mo Luan, Meng Tu reacted quickly. He contacted the frontline command center, target Onyx Soul, confirm death. For a short period of time, no one answered him. At the frontline command center, Cat Eyes, Zhu Ling, the technical personnel, and even the government security personnel were all stunned on the spot. The room was deathly silent. The vast majority of them weren't ability users or burners. No matter how experienced they were, when faced with the most straightforward form of extraordinary power, they had to spend time to mend the enormous cracks in their common sense, and the gap in their hearts. As for people like Cat Eyes and Zhu Ling, they had to express reverence towards the scene before them. But the instigator of all this, Tian Bang, slightly reduced the area covered by his formatting domain. He said, "Don't do meaningless things." Meng Tu was slightly startled, but he soon saw that a mass of rolling black smoke was rapidly gathering in front of Tian Bang. And in the gaps between the smoke and smoke, a blood-colored glow seeped out. The black smoke and bloody light constructed Mo Luan's silhouette in 1 or 2 breaths of time. Then this founding elder of the Blood Flame Order stretched out his body from the void and nimbly landed on the ground. He was about 7 or 8 meters away from Tian Bang, much closer than before. Compared to the beginning, it seemed that only the clothes on his body had become tattered. He actually dodged that attack just now. Meng Tu felt that this result was even more difficult to accept than the super-destructive power Tian Bang had displayed. Previously, he clearly saw Tian Bang's claw, strengthened by the will of the blood flame, strike Mo Luan's face solidly. Tian Bang wasn't surprised. He stood very casually. For the sake of comfort, he even stuffed his hands into his pockets. He was like a pretentious celebrity or a shoddy and low-quality ruffian. He grinned and said, "I've flipped the cards. Right now it's 200%, right?" "Ha, you can say that." Mo Luan slightly curled up his 10 fingers and exercised his elbow and wrist joints. The arm bones that were shattered during the collision were magically restored, but his complexion was even paler. Even as he stood, his body trembled slightly. Only his smile could be considered relaxed. But for someone as solemn as him, a smile was a kind of abnormality. Ever since the 100% began, he had always been this abnormal. However, he still looked at Tian Bang with extreme seriousness. "It seems to be an amazing invention." "Yeah, but I didn't scare you. It's really boring." "Who said that? If I still had a heart, it would have broken my throat and flown out by now." "That's true." Tian Bang took his hands out of his pockets and assumed an offensive stance. This was the first time tonight that he had been so formal. "I was going to ask you how much weight you lost, but now I don't have to think about it." What did he mean? The people who were paying attention to this battle had similar suspicions long ago. But the society had the advantage of having a secretary with extremely outstanding insight and knowledge to interpret the situation. Mr. Mo Luan used the Black Soul Body technique to completely ignite his fleshly body and undergo an irreversible power catalysis. In a sense, he's already dead. What's left in the world now is only his shadow and will. That's a lie. Just like that, if he doesn't do that, he doesn't have any chance of defeating Tian Bang, a super burner that is infinitely close to becoming an extraordinary. The communication at the mission window had yet to end. the radiance of the formatting domain had already spread out once more. Compared to the previous eruption, its radiance was much dimmer. However, the radiance was restrained and condensed to the point of substance. It was relaxed and at will. Just this pinnacle of control caused all the burners present to be willing to offer up their knees in exchange for a moment of possession. And this was only a part of it. At the same time that the formatting domain spread out, Tian Bang's exposed skin was covered in a layer of bloody flames. The scorching and burning flames leaped endlessly, as if they were spurting out from the pores of his entire body. Chapter 425. Whoosh! Luo Nan suddenly jolted up from his bed. He had just taken a shower, but his body was already covered in a thin layer of sweat. This was the result of being startled. Cat eyes and the human-faced arachnid's clairvoyance perspective clearly displayed the scene within the ruins. At this moment, the world with Tian Bang at its core was clearly divided into 3 layers by the blood flames and the format of fire. The 3 layers appeared to be separated, but a subtle unity appeared within their internal logic because of Tian Bang's existence. What supported the essence of the burner's power was undoubtedly the archetype format, the high imitation of formatting theory stolen by Yen Hong and Quantum Corporation. However, was what appeared before his eyes truly the archetype format? Luo Nan turned around, his gaze pointing at the notebook on the bedside table. The 2 books were together. The top layer was his black notebook, and the bottom layer was his grandfather's experimental records. He reached over and pulled out the book at the bottom. His fingertips brushed across the somewhat bulging and deformed cover. He paused for a moment and lifted the cover, revealing the classic 3-layer structure of a tetrahedron, an inscribed sphere, and an outer-scribed sphere. There was no light in the room, but Luo Nan's heart lantern of the eye's orifice illuminated the room. The textures and lines of the diagram were all clear. The slight pauses and bends were all vivid in his mind. Of course, there was also the 16-word formula, my heart is a prison, my heart is a furnace. My heart calls for a mirror, my heart calls for a nation. The diagram and the words were so familiar that they were engraved in his soul. But at this moment, his fingertips clearly touched them, but he vaguely felt as if there was an invisible barrier between them. The mission window had become unprecedentedly lively due to the continuous intense scenes. Papercut and Shuele actively expressed their opinions, but Cat Eye's judgment was a bit more daring. It looks like he's at the extraordinary level. She didn't say which one, because regardless of whether it was Tian Bang or Mo Luen, their attacks and defenses had already surpassed the limits of the architect level. At least, this was how it seemed to her. Papercut was more in agreement. Mo Luen was only a hair away from becoming an extraordinary at his peak. Now that he's burning his body and soul with irreversible resolve, he might be able to touch the threshold of becoming an extraordinary. Secretary He, what do you think? He Yuan avoided the question of extraordinary and responded, Tian Bang should be even stronger. In the early days of mechanical modification, his body's modification ratio had already exceeded 60%, yet he was able to gradually grasp the power of the archetype format day after day of experimentation. He didn't even have to borrow the dynamo core technology. This in itself is a miracle, and a breakthrough type. At this moment, everyone could see that Mo Luen, who was directly in front of Tian Bang, was truly incompatible with the red, white, and black 3-layer structure. Naturally, he also suffered an unprecedented rejection and strong pressure. While they were discussing, Mo Luen's skinny body seemed to have been instantly pressed into the deep sea. Under the terrifying pressure from all directions, his body twisted and deformed before collapsing. Phew! A soft exhalation sounded, and it was surprisingly clear. With his aura, Mo Luen turned into a specter and appeared at Tian Bang's side. His posture was no different from before. A meaningless obsession, a person who has already entered the furnace. As he spoke, Tian Bang still maintained his attacking posture, but he didn't adjust his position according to Mo Luen's shift. He still looked ahead, even though there was nothing there. As soon as he finished speaking, Mo Luen's figure disintegrated once more and shifted once more. However, as long as he was covered by the formatting domain, it would be difficult for him to maintain stability in any direction for a long time. In other words, Tian Bang's domain possessed omnidirectional control. In the end, Mo Luan returned to the front of Tian Bang, facing his attacking posture directly. It really is a domain, right? He's completely taking the initiative. Papercut was convinced by He Yuan's interpretation. He combined it with Cat Eye's judgment. Right now, is Tian Bang already an extraordinary? I don't have the qualifications to judge. He Yuan still didn't give a direct answer. At this time, a sentence was suddenly inserted into the mission window. Is the so-called super burner a breakthrough in the archetype format? The one who spoke was Luo Nan. The few people on this side of the mission window more or less knew of the complicated relationship between Luo Nan and the archetype format. The atmosphere of discussion suddenly froze. Luo Nan clearly asked He Yuan, but she didn't respond. Luo Nan continued to ask about this. What step has the research of the archetype format progressed to in the end? His telepathic thoughts passed through the psychic wave network and was mapped into the virtual mission window, allowing others to perceive it. The corresponding state of mind and will seem to penetrate space and reach a different corner of the city. This was an office that was approximately 20 square meters in size. The desks, chairs, and appliances were all modern and minimalist. The lines were sharp and bright, as if a 2D design had been moved here. It lacked a realistic texture. The only living existence in the office was He Yuan. Right now, she was sitting quietly in an office chair. The holographic screen on her desk was constantly lit. Additionally, a projector was simultaneously projecting 4 or 5 virtual screens, representing the various affairs that were being handled. At the same time, there were figures coming and going outside the office. They provided assistance and services to the brain hub. It had only been a month since He Yuan entered this type of office mode, but she had already gradually gotten used to this rhythm. She handled 3 to 5 affairs at the same time, involving the society, government affairs, family, and other domains. She handled them with ease. But at this time, she paused for a rare moment. Her gaze was blank. She was a bit tired, and she felt a bit powerless. Pacifying people's hearts had never been her area of expertise. She sat quietly like this for a moment. She didn't handle any affairs on the virtual desktop, nor did she respond to Luo Nan. She just fiddled with her wristband, activating a certain function. Her pupils contracted slightly. She adjusted the light filter so that she could see a virtual interface that had just been set up in the air. Only she could see it. A tetrahedron diagram appeared on the interface. There was a translucent letter, B, revolving within it. He Yuan reached out her hand. Her palm examined the fingerprint path, body temperature, special waveband, and other information one by one. 2 seconds later, she passed through the secret identification. The next level of the page opened up, and the relevant database was opened to her. Tian Bang. Code name TBX. Real-time status monitoring. Soon, a virtual human figure appeared on the side of the interface. All kinds of markings pointed out the relevant data of the key parts. There were also large amounts of formulas and explanations that flowed like water. He Yuan roughly swept over the relevant entries. She muttered to herself in silence. Her wristband vibrated at this time. She received a call. After activating the invisible interface, all the calls that could come in were encrypted communications. He Yuan swept her gaze over and accepted the call. Hello, Dr. Pan. Hello, Mrs. He. I just noticed that you entered the system query page. It's a bit rare, so I came to ask. Congratulations, Dr. Pan. You've made a breakthrough in your research. Right. Tian Bang is currently in Xia City. You must know that you're paying attention to him. This kid will certainly be very happy. A clear and bright laughter came from the other side. There really has been decent progress so far. This is the credit of everyone in Team B. It is also the victory of the entire research system. Yes. This is the victory of the system. Chapter 426. Dr. Pan continued to smile. Of course, if we can beat Team A, it'll be even more worth it. At the very least, we'll be able to poach a portion of Deep Blue's funds. You'll have to help me with this. I believe the Interstellar Joint Committee will make the correct judgment. That would require them to really use their brains. Alright, let's not talk about these boring things. I'm going to Sia City to see my sister and a few old friends while I'm at it. Why don't we hang out sometime? Alright. Yuein didn't want to chat any longer. After exchanging a few polite words, she hung up and closed the invisible interface. Luo Nan didn't ask any more questions, and no one else spoke either. The atmosphere was probably quite awkward. For the time being, she had no intention of replying. Looking at the list of matters that flowed in like a stream, Yuein felt a rare gloominess. For the time being, she didn't want to pay any more attention. She stood up and walked to the window. The curtain sensed her presence and opened automatically. She touched the glass lightly and the sash moved to the side. This was a high-rise office area that was over 120 floors high. From here, one could see the bustling night scene of the metropolis of Sia City. There were splendid and magnificent lights, but there was also a boundless darkness. Just like the autumn wind blowing in the face, it swept up the hair on the temples and rolled up the curtains. It was both refreshing and cold. Yuein stood there, quietly watching the night. Luo Nan gazed into the distance from the window. The Nade district was to the southeast. As their contact deepened, Yuein's understanding of Luo Nan was constantly renewed. His impression of an ability user rookie with special talent gradually changed to a unique character with limitless potential who was constantly walking on the edge of danger. Whether it was Luo Nan's personal goals, the fields he touched upon, or the connections left behind by his grandfather and father, all of them doomed him to bear enormous pressure at all times. A single misstep and he would be mercilessly crushed. Right now, Luo Nan was more or less a bit muddle-headed. Yuein would rather have him stay muddle-headed for a longer period of time. At the very least, the mood of gazing at the night sky would be slightly better. Several dozen kilometers away, Luo Nan's side of the night was tranquil. The community culture of the Nade district was relatively conservative. After 10 o'clock at night, there were very few noises in the surroundings. Most people had already fallen asleep or were preparing to sleep. As for Luo Nan, it would be very difficult for him to rest normally tonight. Yuein still hadn't replied by the mission window. Luo Nan didn't press her any further. He just waited quietly. He leaned against the headboard and flipped the pages of his notebook. His thoughts were similar to the contents of these pages. They seemed to be constantly appearing, but there was no real meaningful information. He didn't even have the mood to pay attention to the fierce battle in the underground parking lot of Aurora Cloud City, even though it was the source of his emotions. In fact, the dim and unclear shallow consciousness had already revealed a different meaning. It was just like the mission window that had not responded. Even though he did not get a clear answer, he already had a trend. The research of the archetype format must have made great progress. This was obviously not good news for Luo Nan. As for how bad it was, Luo Nan did not know. Luo Nan closed his notebook and raised his head. What the naked eye could see was the ceiling, but his field of vision was much vaster. The battles of Aurora Cloud City had been reflected from the regions where the believers were located. The breadth of his field of vision exceeded that of practically everyone in Sia City. But at this time, it was unable to help him penetrate the barriers of space and time and clearly see the changes in the future. Closing his eyes, the darkness might be more suitable for his current mood. This kind of reaction was a little too much. Why? Luo Nan was a bit unsure of his own thoughts, so he said that he shouldn't deceive himself in the future. His self-analysis was quite ruthless. He thought that it was because the new results of the archetype format had raised the threshold of challenge, causing him to feel fearful and uneasy. No, it shouldn't be like this. In the past, Luo Nan would have probably pondered over this by himself. But today he encountered this kind of subtle problem, and his method of handling it was more frank. He didn't open his eyes again. He pressed down on his ears and sent a message to He Yueyin through the hex ear. This time it was a private message. He did his best to discard the emotional overtones of the message. Do you have any concrete information on the breakthrough of the archetype format? He Yueyin finally responded several seconds later, I do. It's still in a confidential state right now. I'll tell you in detail once the level drops, okay? It was a marvelous turn. He Yueyin's response was a bit more emotional than usual. Luo Nan continued to ask, I just want to know the general direction and degree. It's always progressing. It's extremely fast. Really? Extremely fast. After a period of blank time, the other side suddenly asked in reply, Mr. Luo, do you have an idea of the global level research system? He Yueyin continued to speak without waiting for Luo Nan to respond. A few dozen Nobel Prize-level academic authorities are leading the way. Dozens of large and medium-sized laboratories have been established in various parts of the world. They have absorbed hundreds of thousands of first-rate scientists. They have spurred hundreds of thousands of researchers. They have leveraged trillions of funds. All for the sake of a single topic, a single goal. As long as it possesses a high degree of research value, it is related to the overall situation of global development. Under this kind of model, a mistake in a certain aspect is often no longer a mistake. It is merely the result of an insignificant experiment. Similarly, being correct is only correct. It is a good beginning, but it is far from the end. The somewhat lengthy explanation was like a flowing stream of water. It washed away the bewilderment in Luo Nan's mind. Luo Nan suddenly understood a bit. He was probing and asking, then, what kind of treatment should a founder receive? A basic reputation. The right to be remembered fairly by others. Don't they belong to a part of the system? Or could it be that we have been excluded from this system from the very beginning? It seemed like he was no longer ignorant. He Yueyin looked calmly at the night scene outside the window, but she was unable to see the youth's face several dozen kilometers away. As for the answer, whether she said it or not, it was meaningless. Luo Nan really did understand. At the very least, he understood a considerable part of it. Capital, power, and honor were never two ends of a seesaw. They were one. It was just like the structure revealed by formatting theory. There was certainly an axis. Then everything revolved around it. That was why it was called a system. He understood the weight and exclusivity of a system very well. Luo Nan was not afraid of these things. He had confidence and he had ambition. He just needed time to expand the construction of formatting theory layer by layer. He would become an extraordinary, a system with him as the axis. And he would emerge victorious in battle. He would stand at the apex of the stars as a matter of course. However, everything needed time. Time. Luo Nan's mind was finally clear, but it was pierced by the blade of reason. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will lose all self-righteous imaginations. He could persevere. He could work hard. But could the old man, who gradually embraced death amidst his madness and loneliness, wait that long? Chapter 427. Luo Nan leaned against the headboard, half sitting, half lying down. The sealed room made him a bit uncomfortable. He subconsciously opened the curtains remotely, letting the night flow in. Perhaps he could dilute his gloomy mood a bit. His wristband vibrated slightly at this time. Someone had sent him a message. It was Xie Junping. Nanster, something has happened to Aurora Cloud City. Luo Nan was disinclined to reply to this sort of rotten news. He pretended not to see it. But this was more or less a reminder. It made him understand that no matter how his mental path twisted and changed, the plane of reality would not change because of his will. Things would proceed as they should. Aurora Cloud City, including Cloud City Water Village and the large residential area, had indeed entered emergency evacuation mode. Whether they were players, tourists, or white-collar workers, they were all required to quickly leave this area. For this reason, the government had even arranged for large vehicles to assist in the evacuation. Various media outlets received the news and rushed to the scene one after another. In this context, the large number of car owners were perhaps the most sensitive group. Due to the existence of the Internet of Things, the large-scale vehicle damage caused by the collapse of the underground parking lot could not be hidden from people. The scene of tens of thousands of people on the building receiving the vehicle damage alarm was quite spectacular. The outbreak of this problem brought quite a bit of difficulty to the evacuation work. The government departments responsible for related matters, such as security and public security, poured out a torrent of abuse at the instigators. But so what? The underground parking lot had a 6th floor. Well, there was no meaning in talking about the floor number right now. Only the first and a small portion of the 2nd floor of the underground parking lot remained in the battle between the two B+ level powers. They barely managed to maintain their original layout. The remaining 4 floors had practically been completely turned into ruins. There was an endless stream of shattered rocks, twisted car bodies, and steel frames. Following the whistling shockwaves, they sputtered and tumbled. A normal person would die beyond recognition in less than 2 seconds here. Luo Nan watched everything coldly through the dual perspectives of the wraith sign and cat eyes. Right now, Tian Bang and Mo Luan were engaged in a suffocating close-quarters attack and defense. The figures of the two were practically fused together under the high-speed attack and displacement. In the blink of an eye, dozens of exchanges of attack and defense occurred. Hands, feet, knees, elbows, shoulders, and even the visible and invisible energy released outwards were all their weapons. They rubbed and twisted together, forming a blood-red tornado of flames. Wherever their figures passed, be it stone or steel, everything was swept and ground to pieces. Such strength could be said to have completely broken away from the limits of the human body. People couldn't help but consider him as an extraordinary. Affected by this situation, Papercut finally couldn't resist breaking the silence spell of the mission window. He said, "My eyes are going blurry. Come over here, professional. Who has the advantage right now?" In terms of body techniques, Mo Luan should be more experienced and ruthless. His rhythm is smoother. Xue Lei had also held back for a long time, so he immediately responded. Xue Lei's eyesight and judgment were worthy of the name, professional. Mo Luan launched a wave of powerful attacks as soon as it was released. His unpredictable claws continuously broke through Tian Bang's defense. The first attack that broke through Tian Bang's defense almost stabbed into his eyes. In the end, it scraped open Tian Bang's brow bone and blood splashed out. This was just the beginning. Following that, Tian Bang's face, neck, chest, and shoulder were hit one after another. Mo Luan's blood flames, which were even purer, clearly suppressed Tian Bang for the first time. Half of Tian Bang's face was burned by the intertwining and twisting blood flames. His skin and flesh were lacerated for a time. It looked like his skull was about to be burned through. But even so, Tian Bang's expression didn't have any particularly obvious changes. It made people wonder whether or not he had been completely transformed into a robot. It was very difficult for people to grasp such details by relying on monitoring equipment to observe. Luo Nan relied on the Wraith Sign's perspective to be sure. Victory and defeat were about to be decided. Luo Nan sighed. Tian Bang's aura had yet to dissipate, but he suddenly roared. A storm of blood flames could be seen erupting. The powerful repulsive force forcefully swept Mo Luan away. Mo Luan's condensed black soul body showed great distortions and deformations. Then it catalyzed into smoke once more. Tian Bang stared at the point where the black smoke split apart. The skin and flesh of his face that was charred by the flames twitched at a terrifying degree. In the end, it formed an extremely malevolent smile. It's not over yet. The brightness of the bright formatting domain on the outside instantly exploded off the charts, forming a glaring white light. The silhouette of Mo Luan's figure was reflected under this screen of light. The misty smoke on the outside seemed to be frozen within the light. Mo Luan's figure reappeared. His face was the same as before, but his expression was grave and serious. It surpassed any moment before. Right now, the contrast in strength between the two sides had already appeared. Mo Luan used the secret technique of Black Soul Body to ignite his body and soul. For a short period of time, his explosive strength was formidable. He also appeared unkillable. But in the end, this was a decisive method. Sooner or later, he would burn out. And Tian Bang, who had the formatting domain and the support of the blood flame willpower, already had the embryonic form of an extraordinary domain. It could be said that he was in an invincible position. Therefore, Tian Bang, who appeared to be in a sorry state, was the one who truly held the upper hand. Luo Nan evaluated in a low voice, "It really is a good cage." The so-called formatting domain used the formatting fire to cover the material plane, as well as the shallow and middle layers of the mental plane. It used its special power of order to form a virtual cage. Mo Luan wanted to tear apart his bindings at all times to enter the depths of the mental plane and display his strong points. But he didn't succeed even once under the pressure of the formatting domain. And no matter how he seized the opportunity to attack, he was unable to deal fatal damage to Tian Bang's steel-like iron body. He was even more unable to shake the erected domain. Just like this, he was unable to attack. He was unable to escape. He had already sunk into absolute passivity. Tian Bang chose the most efficient, most concise, and most callous method. He consumed the embers of Mo Luan's body and soul bit by bit. Mo Luan had no other path. Just like how he chose to ignite his body and soul earlier. If he didn't do this, he would have been smashed into dregs by Tian Bang's fist. The difference in strength erased too many options. Mo Luan would lose all his chips in this gamble sooner or later. Victory and defeat had been decided. He couldn't drag it out any longer. Luo Nan's thoughts were clear. The wraith sign silently churned in the depths of the mental plane. His six-colored demon eyes locked onto the material plane, differentiating the threat level of each target one by one. Mo Luan had been tossed and turned by bloated stomach before. The order led by the Blood Soul Temple had caused a bit of an effect on its chaotic nature. However, Luo Nan's incorporeal chains were unquestionably the number one ruler. After the clear command was issued, the berserk chaotic elements suppressed the order of the Blood Soul Temple, which lacked momentum. It even interfered with the imprints left behind by the shepherds on the Blood Soul Temple. Chapter 428. Luo Nan's consciousness sunk into the wraith sign's body, observing the parasitic Blood Soul Temple. Its towering structure seemed to be a lonely peak formed from cooling lava that spewed out from underground. There was also fiery red lava that flowed along the mountain cracks and holes. Outside of this lonely peak, the element of chaos was like thunderclouds and turbid mist. It spread in all directions, surrounding the Blood Soul Temple. Occasionally, clouds and mist would cover the mountain, and even purple lightning and dark thunder would rumble and crush down. It made this place seem like a demonic mountain in the depths of hell. It was bizarre, strange, and frightening. This was the human-faced arachnid's power of chaos. It was a counter to the Blood Soul Temple. If this were not the case, Luo Nan would find it hard to discover the special traces hidden deep within the complex structure of the Blood Soul Temple. Here, and there. 1, 2, 3, 4. The numbers match. It can't be a coincidence. The construction of the Blood Soul Temple required the realization of the 2,120 steps of the path of Bloodfire. There were 6 stages and 5 buildings. 4.5 of the related buildings had been completed. They were all built against the mountain, gradually growing taller. The imprint that Luo Nan discovered was located in the second stage of the building from the bottom up. This place was like an exquisitely arranged courtyard garden. It was semi-open, with a complex structure and many paths. There was also a river of magma that flowed over. It had a very artificial tendency to complicate a simple problem. For specks of deep red fireflies wandered in this garden. They were very eye-catching even when floating above the stream of magma. Occasionally, they would be stimulated by the descending mist and mist. They were quite lively. Luo Nan felt a familiar scent from these 4 dots of firefly light. He had been in contact with the core members of the Blood Flame Order of Xia City through the Wraith sign over the past month. He felt all sorts of details and information at close range. This familiarity came into play right now. 1 master, 2 assistants, 3 first ablatums, and Mo Luan, who was engaged in a life and death battle. There were 4 shepherds. So the imprints left behind by the shepherds in the Blood Soul Temple looked like this. They were like fireflies. Of course, this didn't mean that the shepherd imprints were glowing bugs. It was just that Luo Nan's current clairvoyance was more or less interfered with by the power of the Blood Soul Temple. He couldn't see the most subtle details clearly. He could only obtain a rough impression for now. The total matches. There's also this one. It looks especially jumpy. He quickly changed his perspective and looked at the material plane. From Luo Nan's perspective, the current situation was very close to the most ideal state. Mo Luan was struggling with all his might, Tian Bang was focused on controlling the situation, and the minds of the others were attracted by the intense battle. The situation was extremely chaotic. Lady Halder and the other related people were far away, drifting about outside. It was hard for them to grasp the actual situation. They completely fulfilled the requirements of fishing in troubled waters. There was only one point. The trader, Ren Hong, had always maintained a high degree of attention towards the human-faced arachnid. He was also extremely sensitive. The moment the shepherd's mark was disturbed, he had sensed it. He had even formed a seal and tried to reverse control it. He was still trying to regain control of the Blood Soul Temple. This was an eyesore. Luo Nan's gaze pierced through the distance of several dozen kilometers to fall on Ren Hong's body. Subconsciously, he reached out his hand. He was no longer satisfied with simply sensing with his spirit. He wanted to push aside the thunderclouds and turbid fog in the magic sign's body and do something more precise. This hand did not extend down, but Luo Nan's will had already cut into the range of the Blood Soul Temple along with the cloud of chaotic element. Luo Nan aimed at the 4 fireflies within the courtyard garden on the 2nd floor. However, in reality, he took a detour to avoid a direct collision with the power of the Blood Soul Temple. He seeped in from the bottommost region. Currently, the Blood Soul Temple was a 4-story building that had completely taken shape. The bottommost region was also the crudest region. It was a forest of jagged rocks. At first glance, it looked natural. There were only a few piles of rocks gathered together in the center. They were arranged in a tidy manner, and their positions were quite meticulous. Simple and unadorned runes were engraved on them. Overall, it looked a bit like a primitive sacrificial offering. However, this region was extremely important to the Blood Soul Temple. The seemingly natural stone forest was endlessly absorbing impurities from the surrounding thunderclouds and turbid fog. This was the beginning of the transformation from chaos to order in the Blood Soul Temple. At present, this transformation could not be considered fast. Large amounts of impurities and chaotic element were deposited here. They were suppressed by the primitive altar within the stone forest, sinking into the region below. This was the location of the infernal inferno before the Blood Soul Temple was formed. A large amount of chaotic element was suppressed here. Under a special operating mechanism, the chaotic element was transformed into a surging magma lake. It was purified anew and then sent out under high pressure to become the source of flowing lava on the mountain of the Blood Soul Temple. Luo Nan's mind circled around the magma lake. It followed the order of the Blood Soul Temple and was sent up to the peak region by high pressure from the internal passageway. It spun around a bit and then meandered down along the external river. It circled around the various regions of the Blood Soul Temple before returning to the magma lake. Oh, so this is the process. Luo Nan roughly understood the basic steps of the Blood Soul Temple's continuous growth. The first step was to absorb impurities and compress the magma. The second step was to spray the magma with high pressure and send it to the peak. The third step was naturally to take shape layer by layer. However, there was no method in the current stage of taking shape at the peak. A large amount of energy was wasted in vain. Presumably, this was due to the absence of a shepherd. In this case, the shepherds on duty, like Mo Luen and Yin Lu, aside from helping the human-faced arachnid find food, were most likely in the control of the taking shape method. Ren Hong had probably fought for this kind of authority before. Now he turned his head to look at the 4 shepherd marks in the courtyard garden on the second floor. Naturally, he had a different feeling. His mind traveled back and forth. It was extremely fast. Even if he followed the order of the Blood Soul Temple, it would only take a blink of an eye for him to travel around. This experience was greatly beneficial for him to gain a deeper understanding of the Blood Soul Temple. He did not have this opportunity when Mo Luen, Yin Lu, and the other shepherds were in place. Since this was the case, Luo Nan was not in a hurry to act. He just immersed his mind into the magma and traveled around the Blood Soul Temple again and again. Due to the complex structure of the mountain, the flow path was subtly different each time. Luo Nan was like running and drifting around the mountain. As the number of times he traveled increased, he became more and more familiar with each path. His understanding of the mountain, the layout of the buildings, and the operation of the related rules became clearer and clearer. He was already certain that of the 4.5 buildings, half of them was the altar at the peak. The 4th floor was a group of temples and halls. The 3rd floor was a cave carved into the mountain. The bottom floor was a courtyard garden, a stone forest, and a lake of magma. Every building possessed a special operation method and function. Some were clear and direct. Some were very obscure. In the end, Luo Nan was still an outsider. He was unable to directly interfere with the Blood Soul Temple. There were many things that he could not see clearly. This was nothing. It was fine as long as it was effective against the shepherd imprint. Luo Nan could now confirm that the shepherd imprint that remained on the 2nd level was similar to a soul clone. It existed on the mental plane and the special space of the Blood Soul Temple. Chapter 429. Luo Nan's attention was naturally focused on a certain firefly on the 2nd floor. This firefly corresponded to Ren Hong. Telepathic thoughts flowed within the lava mountain stream. The gravitational pull from the core region of the living starry sky used this channel to silently link with the target and exert its effect. First, I need to control my strength. In the beginning, Luo Nan purposefully restrained himself. An incorporeal force pulled the firefly, slowly but firmly destroying its natural drifting state. In response, Ren Hong shivered violently in the underground parking lot. He tried to form a seal to calm his mind and maintain the stability of the shepherd mark. Clearly, Luo Nan's judgment was correct. Ren Hong was currently the most sensitive to the shepherd mark. However, this fellow relied on accumulation to forcefully charge into the high shepherd mark. He could not do it again. Right now, he could not see the results at all. Instead, his eyes bulged out because of his inappropriate strength and nervousness. Ren Hong blurted out in the next moment, "Let's finish this quickly. They're trying to expel me from the Blood Soul Temple." Undoubtedly, he was asking Tian Bang for help. Ren Hong's cries grew increasingly ear-piercing in the suffocating battlefield. Tian Bang should have heard him, but he did not respond immediately. Mo Luen's expression was still indifferent even though his body had turned incorporeal during the fierce battle. He even laughed leisurely. "Isn't the restraining faction saying anything?" Luo Nan had been paying attention to the battle situation in the underground parking lot, especially Mo Luen's response. He saw Mo Luen's ambiguous yet rich expression, and his heart was filled with joy. This is for the best. The vaguer the words were, the more likely it was for the parties involved to misunderstand. This was especially true for Mo Luan and Mrs. Halder, who were isolated from the outside world. They probably thought that the other party was behind this. As for Tian Bang, it was hard for him to think otherwise. This allowed Luo Nan to completely extricate himself from the maelstrom. Tian Bang ignored Ren Hong's plea for help, but he still responded to Mo Luan, "I'm doing it right now. Getting rid of you is the most efficient move." The two instantly engaged in combat. Luo Nan laughed involuntarily, since his attention completely turned to the border region between the mental plane and the Blood Soul Temple. He looked down coldly from his unique perspective. In the living starry sky, the in-depth depiction of Ren Hong's life sketch was nearing its end. The invisible pulling force increased layer by layer. Even in the Blood Soul Temple, there was still a high degree of freedom. And Luo Nan was very rational. He didn't touch the order frame of the Blood Soul Temple, so the Blood Soul Temple behaved very quietly. Since it's already like this, the traction force began to take shape, and with a clanging sound, Ren Hong, who was under the protection of the formatted domain, trembled again. He opened his mouth and wanted to shout, but he couldn't make a sound. Very happily, Ren Hong put his hand on his throat. For the first time, he showed a genuine expression of fear. He looked around, his eyes drifting and vacant. It's starting. Many days later, the heavily chained crow appeared once more outside Luo Nan's core star region. It firmly locked onto Ren Hong's firefly and suddenly exerted force. Ren Hong's mouth was wide open. His heart was filled with terror. In his opinion, the ringing of the chains on the mental level was completely unreasonable. The corresponding special vibrations and restraints instantly spread to his entire body and soul structure. The feeling of numbness, the feeling of being bound, the feeling of being dominated. The consecutive senses all pointed to the same conclusion. He was under attack, not just from the shepherd's mark, but also from his body. The danger came from the shepherd's mark. It came from the Blood Soul Temple. A powerful binding force suddenly appeared. It was like a sinister and intense poison. It silently permeated and silently erupted, so much so that Luo Nan's mouth and tongue became numb. He could only watch helplessly as the shepherd's mark was forcibly pulled down from the second stage of the bloodfire path. It returned to the lowest level of the lake of magma. The fluorescent light became dim, scattered, and unstable. The threat it posed to Ren Hong was suddenly raised to a whole new level. And at this time, Ren Hong's mind flashed with Lady Halder's warning before the herding method ceremony was held. The herding method is to advance and not retreat. Live and die with the Blood Soul Temple. If you retreat midway, the power of the backlash will exceed everyone's imagination. Oh. Oh no. Luo Nan's severely sluggish brain cells were no longer able to bear the weight of his thoughts. The firefly had already melted in the lake of magma before he could finish his thought. What was even worse was that this process was like a falling domino. It spread from the lowest level of the Blood Soul Temple all the way down to where Ren Hong's body was located. That firefly was too precise. The change in the situation somewhat exceeded Luo Nan's expectations. He had been paying close attention to the nature of the shepherd's mark. He had been affected by the precision of his senses, so he wasn't able to see it clearly. Only when the mark dissolved in the magma did he catch a glimpse of it. Luo Nan wasn't able to see it too clearly, but he was able to confirm that the so-called shepherd's mark was a complex structural circuit similar to the dripping sword. At first glance, it seemed to be much more complex. The precision of the structure was even greater than the condensation ring structure he was so proud of. Deducing from practical experience, wouldn't the shepherd's strength be 10 times that of his in order to form such a complex circuit? Although Ren Hong was the deputy first ablatum of the Blood Flame Order, his strength was at best between C+ and B-. It was impossible for him to reach this level. Luo Nan suddenly came to a realization when the terrifying backlash force surged back. The blood flame order's herding technique must have used special techniques to transcend ranks to mold this type of complex configuration. From the looks of it, it certainly involved the resonance of the soul and energy. The effort invested was no small matter. Luo Nan was shocked. This was no longer just an imprint. It was a branch of the body and soul that grew here. If something were to happen and they weren't cut off in time, it would bring about a fatal chain reaction. Perhaps Ren Hong had a way to reduce the damage, but he was bound by Luo Nan's invisible chains. He lost his best opportunity. In the underground parking lot, Ren Hong's entire body was already frozen to death. He couldn't do anything. The invisible and traceless shackles and the terrifying backlash completely dominated his mind. The deep blue walkers protecting him finally realized something was wrong at this time. They immediately called for help. Only 2 seconds passed. Another 7 or 8 deep blue walkers arrived at Ren Hong's location, in addition to the 4th squad from before. The one leading them was Tian Bang's deputy, Senior Colonel Meng Tuesday. The group didn't say anything after they arrived. They synchronized and coordinated with Meng Tu at the center. Flames spread out and interweaved into a relatively independent region. This was a formatting domain without a doubt. It was a mystical place capable of dispelling the vast majority of extraordinary powers. It was reasonable to say that mental attacks and curse techniques would find it hard to penetrate this barrier. This was the most outstanding response Meng Tu could muster. It's a pity that the medicine isn't right. The connection between the backlash from the Blood Soul Temple and Ren Hong was much deeper and more concealed. It was a destructive force that directly acted upon the structure of Ren Hong's body and soul from the position of the polar domain. Chapter 430. Luo Nan's attention was completely focused on the Blood Soul Temple, but the most eye-catching thing on the material plane was still the showdown between Tian Bang and Mo Luan. Of the 2 publicly acknowledged B+ rank powerhouses, one was extraordinarily tyrannical, while the other was cruel and decisive. Their combat power had been greatly increased compared to normal, almost surpassing the limits of human beings. Their battle could be described as exciting and tragic. But no matter how exciting the duel was, it had to come to an end. As time passed, Tian Bang used the blood flame willpower as the axis and used the formatted domain to seal off the surroundings. Its power was infinitely close to the extraordinary domain, stripping away the advantages brought by Mo Luan's proficient body skills and the Black Soul body's void transformation. He firmly controlled the initiative of the battle and didn't give Mo Luan any more chances. Hit! As he shouted, Tian Bang punched out. The fist pressed down on the void. The blood flames and the format of fire interweaved and blended together, melting the void with a single strike. Tian Bang had been accumulating this punch for a long time. The impact could be said to be unprecedented. As soon as Mo Luan came into contact with it head-on, his figure twisted and disappeared. It was difficult for him to withstand it, and he knew that he couldn't take it head-on. Thus, he used the same trick again, intending to evade the frontal attack through shifting positions. However, his figure did not move. His body, which was still twisting and flickering between illusion and reality, was fatally restricted. He was locked in the void and became Tian Bang's living target. Tian Bang's fist came again, and Mo Luan could only block it. The first few punches were still able to resist the transforming strength, but later on, the fiercely burning body and soul could no longer hold on. Tian Bang's punches were like landslides and tsunamis, endless and endless. Mo Luan didn't have any chance to adjust as the speed of the punches made people feel despair. The bloody flames that were brought about turned into gorgeous and cruel fireworks, instantly submerging Mo Luan. And in the depths of the dazzling brilliance, Mo Luan let out a shrill howl. His spirit swept up a prairie fire. He used the method he was best at to make the final collision with Tian Bang. In the span of 1 to 2 seconds, all the detection and scanning devices were rendered useless, and some were even destroyed by the sparks from the short circuit. As the core of the frontline command center, it suddenly became deaf and blind. But the corresponding turbulence could be felt even by the deaf and blind. The blood-red tornado that rose from the ground directly broke through the floor of the first floor of the underground parking lot. Then, it went up and pierced through at least 5 floors of the building, causing the walls and pillars of the Aurora Cloud capital to tremble. The building was visibly shaking. The damper in the center of the building swung back and forth, suppressing the demonic wind that came from underground. When the building regained its tranquility, Mo Luen, who was located at the core of the storm, also turned into ashes, leaving no trace. Tian Bang still had his usual smile on his face as he wiped his face with the back of his hand. The place it touched was the half of the wound that had been burned to the bone. But at this time, the carbonized skin was already covered with red and white nerve fibers, including the dermis and other skin tissues, and was about to recover to its original state. Cat Eyes noticed this detail and immediately raised her eyebrows. His recovery ability is that strong? He doesn't seem to be using much effort. At the mission window, Papercut sent a dumbfounded dog emoji. That's Mo Luen, one of the most senior elders of the inner world. Even in this state, Tian Bang is still not an extraordinary. The topic revolved around Tian Bang and seemed to want to deepen. But at this time, the result of the other side finally came to an end. Ren Hong had successfully delayed his death for a period of time. He struggled with all his strength, fighting against the invisible chains and the blood and fire lava that was devouring him with all his might. He even took half a step shakily. This was his last movement before he died. In the next moment, Ren Hong's eye sockets, mouth, ears, and nose spouted out a glaring blood-colored flame. After another half a second, the blood-colored flame tore through the skin and flesh of Ren Hong's entire body. It was like another blooming firework. Amidst the brilliant flame, one could vaguely see a charred corpse fall and hit the ground, raising a cloud of smoke and ashes. Flesh and bones were all melted away. The deep blue walkers who were supporting the formatted domains were all stunned. The first to react was actually Tian Bang, who was far away. He was only distracted for a moment before pouncing over. Following his arrival, the two formatted domains naturally fused together without any conflict. Tian Bang, who was dressed in casual clothes, appeared excessively slender compared to his subordinates who were wearing exoskeleton armor. But he was fully deserving of being the core. He led the combined formatted domain and used the highest standards to lock down the void. He drew the rules for the intersecting mental and material planes. In such a sealed space, even Mo Luen would be nailed to death on the spot by him. His other underhanded methods would be exposed in the first instance. But the result was that he didn't discover anything. Tian Bang suddenly turned his head. His gaze was like lightning as it swept over the place where Mo Luen had been annihilated. But after several seconds, he still didn't discover any clues. In the mission window, the group of people who were previously marveling at Tian Bang's strength that was infinitely close to that of an extraordinary were now stunned. What's going on? Who killed Ren Hong? I didn't see anything. Maybe Mo Luen's determination to fight with his life on the line was because he had a backup plan. He wanted to eliminate the traitor at a time like this. What about the method? How would I know? Cat Eyes and Papercut discussed back and forth for a bit. Cat Eyes felt that her mind was even more muddled. However, she still had a bit of suspicion. She sent a message through an even more secretive channel. Did you do it? She asked, but her tone wasn't too certain. 80 kilometers away, Luo Nan let out a long breath. He slowly lay down on his bed and adjusted his mood. He waited until he felt that he was more or less in place before closing his eyes. His soul went out of his body in the next second, bringing along the external neuron. He suddenly passed through the window and escaped into the void. Only now did he respond simply, help keep an eye on her for a bit longer. Thanks. You. Hey, can't you say something clearly? Luo Nan didn't pay any more attention to Cat Eyes. He could wash away all suspicions in front of everyone. No one would even think of him. Cat Eyes was the only one who was naturally suspicious. Since this was the case, there was no need to explain. Because of his actions, Aurora Cloud City was in a mess of chicken feathers. Luo Nan was disinclined to pay attention to them. He waited until he was certain that he had completely extricated himself from the situation before he gave the Wraith sign a clear command. The Wraith sign obeyed the command and immediately entered the polar domain. He even used the cover of the mental screen to move in extreme stealth. He was very careful. After all, he had caused such a huge commotion. Perhaps some great god would come over to take a look. Fortunately, no such signs had been discovered for the time being. And so, Luo Nan guided the Wraith sign with his thoughts. He carefully traveled through the void and left the large residential area. He arrived at the wetland jungle of Acumen College. The gear building in the depths of this place had been waiting silently for a long time. As for Luo Nan's soul body, it had already traversed the 80-kilometer distance. It was waiting in the atrium area. The Wraith sign arrived without any hesitation. He borrowed the external neuron's key to activate his telescope mode. He opened up a passageway leading to the cloud world. Go in. The Wraith sign was as obedient as a puppy. It directly threw itself inside, and the passageway immediately closed. This was Luo Nan's trump card. With the existence of the cloud world and the secret lock that was gear, even if the military dug 3 feet deep into Xia City, they would not be able to find the whereabouts of the Wraith sign. As for the group of people from the Blood Flame Order in Xia City, Luo Nan waited quietly for a moment. His thoughts flickered. He did not use the telescope, but he could see the turbulent layers of clouds rolling past like the waves of the sea. It was just as he had sensed in the cloud world. The connection between his soul body and his fleshly body had not been severed. Then it was possible for his connection with the Wraith sign to be maintained. In this way, even if he did not come to gear in the future, he could still use the Wraith sign to grasp the situation over there in real time. This was extremely ideal. Of course, he was able to maintain a smooth connection under the enormous and complex warps of the void, but this did not mean that others could do the same. Luo Nan's mind cut into the Wraith sign's body, paying attention to the Blood Soul Temple. At this time, the 3 fireflies in the garden-like structure of the 2nd floor had already been extinguished. This represented that the connection between this place and the outside world had been completely severed. This point was in line with Luo Nan's expectations. The Wraith sign was able to temporarily block the connection in the polar domain. There was no reason for it to exist in the current situation. But it was worth noting that the extinguished fireflies did not return to nothingness. The 3 shepherd imprint configurations still existed. They transformed into gloomy grains of sand that fell on the 2nd floor of the Blood Soul Temple. If Luo Nan had not been constantly monitoring them, he would have overlooked them. The shepherd imprint was indeed quite sinister. Luo Nan's consciousness streaked across the imprint that belonged to Mo Luan. He was a bit puzzled. The imprint of a dead person was actually preserved, and he could not see the difference between it and the other 2 imprints. He should have cleaned it up earlier. Oh, looking at Renheng's fate, he was going to die. Forget about it. In any case, Luo Nan was in the stomach of the Wraith sign, and he was under the control of the formatting theory system. He was not afraid of any mischief. Luo Nan paid attention to this. He did not want to stay in this sensitive area for too long. He made a detour around the large residential area and returned home. After his body and soul became one, Luo Nan looked over at Aurora Cloud City. Tian Bang was quite calm. He issued orders one after another, attempting to lock onto the traces of Lady Halder and the other backbones of the Blood Flame Order of Xia City. But the clearer his goal was, the more it deviated from reality. Luo Nan swept a glance, and the corner of his lips hooked up. That's right. Tian Bang was in the limelight today. He had stepped on Mo Luan's old life to climb to the top. He would probably become one of the hottest characters on Earth for some time in the future. But his plan today was unable to reach perfection. And the most glaring mark was left there by Luo Nan himself. This wasn't the end yet. In the mission window, Papercut was analyzing the situation after today. For instance, the Blood Flame Order of Xia City had shed all pretense of cordiality with the military forces represented by Tian Bang. They had lost Mo Luan, their greatest combat power, and their core backbone, the Deputy First Ablatum, had rebelled. Basically, they had no way to mingle in Xia City. Luo Nan lay on his bed looking at these messages, but he didn't pay much attention to them. After a moment, he opened the private chat window with He Yueyin. He hesitated whether or not he should ask about Tian Bang and the progress of the archetype formats research. But thinking of He Yueyin's usual style, Luo Nan closed the window in the end. Through the closed system, he sent a message to Cat Eyes that she could evacuate. Then, he turned his gaze to the cloud world and entrusted his consciousness to the Wraith sign. He wandered in this bizarre and dangerous world, his mind constantly spinning. That kind of mushed-mouth ape would form a nest at any time. He had to be careful. Oh, there was also Snake Tongue. He had to find her as soon as possible. With the Wraith Talisman, it should be much easier. He could not stop monitoring the Blood Soul Temple. He had to figure out how to turn it into his own. Exploring the cloud world was also on the agenda. Chapter 431. It was the middle of November, and the beginning of winter had passed. The light snow had yet to fully fall, and the weather was getting colder and colder. Xia City no longer had its name. The wind blew from the sea. It was cold and damp, especially at night. The wind could seep into one's bones. The mind study of Divine Yu Jim was originally the resting place of Jim Master Xiu. All of his belongings had been moved, including the Tai Chi ball powered by the dynamo core that had yet to be repaired. It was spacious and spacious, restoring the original appearance of the training field. The cold wind blew in through the wide open door, making whooshing sounds. Luo Nan didn't care about this. He lay on the cork floor with his upper body bare. Sweat poured from his body like syrup, and the heat rising from his body had already formed a domain that enveloped his entire body. Let alone the cold wind blowing from the sea, even if you were to throw it into a refrigerator, the cold air inside would be melted away. The dagger he used in the fight just now had fallen to the side of his face. The tip of the dagger was pointed at him. Luo Nan tilted his head and was about to touch it, but he didn't want to move a single finger. Xue Lei, who stood to the side, was a bit out of breath at Luo Nan's ghastly appearance. The current Luo Nan was far from being Xue Lei's opponent, but after over a dozen days of beating, Luo Nan had become more and more adept at utilizing the strength and reactions of his meridian points and internal organs. Xue Lei was a bit worried that Luo Nan would make a comeback while wielding a sharp blade. Xue Lei was a bit tired, and Luo Nan was tormented even more miserably. Jim Master Xiu was the one who requested this duel, but he had already left for his new residence to tidy up. Only the two bitter youngsters were left to consciously practice according to the requirements. Xue Lei was certainly very obedient, but Luo Nan was more or less forced. This was because Xiu Xinyu had said some harsh words to him when they arrived at the gym in the evening. What did he say? As a cultivator, interference has never been a reason to not do well. If you want to obtain extraordinary power, you must be affected by the forces of nature. You must be countered by the entire society. If you have to find a reason, then no one under the heavens can help you. These words made Luo Nan stupefied on the spot. Then came the storm-like Sansho practice, all the way until now. Xue Lei meticulously carried out the gym master's demands, and finally began to think. He had always considered himself to be Gym Master Xiu's translator, but right now, he couldn't quite grasp the situation. Hey, what did you do to make Gym Master so angry? Luo Nan's chest violently heaved up and down. He nearly choked out a single word, but his thoughts recovered from the emptiness brought about by exhaustion. I'm talking about, impetuous. Ah. I've been busy lately. I'm distracted. Luo Nan felt tired saying another word. He closed his eyes and forcefully squeezed out the sweat that soaked into his eyes. But he was unable to avoid the feeling of soreness. This was the only reason. Luo Nan had been really busy recently. He was so busy that he couldn't split himself. Not only did he have to monitor the movements of the Wraith Sign and the Cloud World, he also had to pay attention to the conflict between the Blood Flame Order and Tian Bang's faction in Xia City, and he also had to complete the 3 security commissions. He had to be even more vigilant against his old enemies. Of course, he also had to train, study, and take remedial lessons. 7 or 8 items were tangled into a ball. Even if he could still manage it now, it inevitably caused some haste and perfunctory, adding a bit of impetuousness. There was a saying, if you don't train for 1 day, you will know. If you don't train for 2 days, your master will know. If you don't train for 3 days, the whole world will know. Luo Nan was pretty much in between the first and second stages. He had already forgotten and skipped 2 of his afternoon classes. Even when he did his homework, he had to make sure that time was his number 1 priority. His concentration had declined to varying degrees. It was easy to understand the reasoning, but it wasn't easy to do it. That was why Gym Master Xiao used this method to help him realize it. Luo Nan had to maintain extreme concentration during his training with Xue Lei, clearing away all distracting thoughts when he was at a terrible disadvantage. And he really did it. The price was his dead dog-like present. Luo Nan really wanted to sleep just like this, sleep until dawn. His wristband vibrated, and a message came in. He didn't want to care about it. But then the hexaear also vibrated. Hey, rice is being sent. See if you received it. Zhang Yingying giggled as she passed the message. She casually added a description, but it made Luo Nan's half-disabled brain dizzy. Rice? The first wave of money from Trigate Security. Zhang Yingying emphasized in a bad mood. I didn't ask you to treat me. It's too early to play dumb. Oh, Luo Nan responded weakly. What's wrong? You got cooked. I just sparred. I'm tired. Zhang Yingying understood. She saw that Luo Nan really wasn't in the right state, so she stopped teasing him. All right. Keep training. Remember to eat more supplements when you get the money. She hung up the call after speaking. Only then did Luo Nan lift up his painstakingly left wrist and place it before his eyes. A message appeared on his wristband. It came from a bank. Your account number XXXX. 1,550,000 credits were transferred to you on November 16th, account balance. Oh, it looked like the clue of the wing-hand bat had been confirmed. According to the contract signed with Trigate Security, the hunting operation was carried out according to the list confirmed by both sides. It required the extermination of all intruders and infected. Every target would receive a corresponding monetary reward. Based on the results of the search, the money would be transferred to Luo Nan's account on the 16th of every month. Since Luo Nan appeared in the form of a crow, the money had to be transferred to the hidden indigo business firm. In any case, it was important that the money was in his hands. After the 1,550,000 credits were transferred, the most direct change was that the bank, the credit organization, the SCA, and other authority departments all received a continuous stream of notifications. The wristband vibrated every few seconds. The message it sent indicated that Luo Nan's personal credit and social authority level had been pulled to the 2nd level. In other words, he was underage and had some restrictions. Otherwise, it would have been very easy for him to enter the 1st level. Xue Lei finally understood what was going on from the side. He clapped his hands and laughed. Excellent. We have supper for tonight. Luo Nan grinned bitterly. Can you wait for me to sleep first? Though Luo Nan said this, he laid on the ground like a corpse for another 10 minutes. The interference and transformation between the mental and material planes allowed his energy to gradually recover. At the very least, he had the strength to walk and eat. It was already nightfall. The city was submerged in a sea of light. In the sky, a long fleet of centipedes was moving along the public transport light rail. They meandered back and forth between the tall buildings, like shadowy snakes floating in a sea of light. In the next moment, several segments of equal length unraveled from the back of this snake. Each segment was an autonomous flying car. The flying cars lit up their lights and decelerated one after another. They cut into the guiding light rail of Boshan building and stopped on various landing platforms. The white-collar workers were exhausted to the point of death after a day of work. They climbed into the cars one after another, enjoying the precious time of leisure on the way home. Shui Lei had already reserved a seat in the flying car through the smart secretary on his wristband terminal. Luo Nan disregarded everything and climbed into the car. He sat paralyzed on the soft seat. His back was pressed against the back of the seat. He didn't want to get up. Chapter 432. Luo Nan opened his eyes. Actually, he had just fallen asleep. The 100-knot flying car had already flown over a dozen kilometers, and a new passenger had arrived in the form of a free ride. Sure enough, it was worker Zhai who got on, but there was a 6 or 7-year-old child in front of him. Ah, worker Zhai, your son. Luo Nan was still a bit confused. He rubbed his eyes and stood up. He was a bit stunned when he saw the child. Worker Zhai was holding the child's shoulder very intimately. The child was a bit restrained, and he looked inexplicably familiar. But when he heard Luo Nan's question, he raised his head and glared. His temperament was quite wild. They greeted each other courteously, and in the end, they all went to the spacious back row to sit down. When they greeted each other, they heard that no one had eaten dinner yet. This was even better. They immediately decided to gather together and have big money bags Luo Nan treat them to a good meal. The car's AI confirmed that the route leading to the destination was clear. The flying car launched into the air and quickly entered the light rail. It stuck to the tail of another 100-knot passing by, entering energy-saving following mode. Worker Zhai patted the child on the shoulder. Come, Weiwu. Say hello to the two uncles. The age difference between the three was only around 10 years. They stared at each other. The sudden increase in age made Luo Nan and Shui Lei, who lacked such awareness, feel a bit dizzy. It was the formidable child who curled his lips. Hello to the two uncles. No need, no need. Just call me brother. Yeah, we're not that old. Worker Zhai is my teacher. If you call me teacher after a few lessons, then it's fine for me to call you now. Let him call me that, or else things will get messy. Worker Zhai was quite persistent, but the child curled his lips. I haven't agreed to let you adopt me yet. Calling me that is giving you face. Don't push your luck. I won't starve to death at the orphanage. Luo Nan and Shui Lei looked at each other. This kid was quite cocky. The relationship between the two was quite strange. Worker Zhai was always a good-tempered person. He wasn't angry at all when he heard this. He laughed. I'm not stopping you from going to the orphanage. I'm a single old man. I don't meet the requirements for adoption. But I can guarantee that you won't lose out if you call me uncle. Only now did Luo Nan remember something. In the past, Papercut had said that Worker Zhai had divorced his wife several years ago. He didn't have any children and was an old, single man. Where did this child come from? This is a young relative with the same surname that I got to know when I participated in the family recognition conference. His name is Di Weiwu. He's a very nimble kid, right? Worker Zhai had already given them an explanation without Luo Nan needing to ask. It turned out that Worker Zhai had participated in the same surname recognition meeting organized by the Civil Affairs Department. His main goal was to provide public relief to those orphans. It was a kind of charity activity. Bringing Di Weiwu out today was also a part of the event. They wanted to choose an extracurricular activity for him and provide financial support. Among his peers, Di Weiwu's background was quite legendary. Though he was young, he followed a tribe of vagrants across the wasteland and moved into Xia City. His parents and relatives had all died in the wilderness. At such a young age, it was unknown how he managed to survive among the nomads, who were known for their cruelty. Luo Nan hadn't thought too much about it before, but he was stimulated by the information of a vagrant. He looked at Di Weiwu again, and the familiarity from before became more and more clear. He probed, "Did you just move into Xia City in the Trigate district?" Worker Zhai nodded, "That's the place." Luo Nan slapped his thigh. There was no mistake about it. It was him, the little monkey. At the beginning of the month, Luo Nan had taken on the business of Trigate security. He had sent his soul into the body of the Crow, Inc., to scout the front lines of the Trigate district and the Forest Wall district. This was where he had interacted with this kid. Back then, the kid had said, "Are you guys here to fight the gangs?" This had left a very deep impression on Luo Nan. And later on, Worker Zhai had seen this kid ride an electric scooter back and forth between the Trigate district and the Forest Wall district at high speed, receiving the teachings of father. "What are you so excited about?" Di Weiwu gave him a sidelong glance. "Are you unhappy that I'm living in the Trigate district?" "It doesn't matter. In any case, I won't be there soon." Weiwu. Worker Zhai reprimanded lightly, and the kid rolled his eyes. Though he was still covered in spikes, he didn't say anything. Luo Nan could see that he quite approved of Worker Zhai. Luo Nan waved his hand. He didn't care. He just felt that the world was full of coincidences. It was very interesting. At the same time, he was a bit baffled. The Trigate district is outside the city, right? You guys have run quite far. Weiwu has already chosen a welfare home. It's in the Forest Wall district. It's not far from here. I wanted to choose an extracurricular activity for him. This kid is like a living monkey. His body is agile, so I wanted him to train in martial arts systematically. I just happened to be free today, so I took him to look for a martial arts gym. A martial arts gym. Xue Lei's sensory radar instantly activated. The martial arts gym is looking for us. Ah, sorry. Only when the words left his mouth did he remember that the Divine Yu gym was closed for an indefinite period of time. Not a shadow of a person could be seen. He hurriedly raised his hand in apology, but he couldn't help but sigh in despair. Worker Zhai laughed. Actually, I was considering your gym in the beginning. You guys have real skills there. I still have that training video of yours. But when I asked Papercut, I found out that you guys are moving. It seems that you guys are going to be closed for a period of time. Xue Lei laughed in embarrassment. Luo Nan said, there should be quite a few martial arts gyms in the society. For example, Mr. Giant Arm's 6 Harmonies gym. It should be pretty good. Weiwu's temperament is quite jumpy. He doesn't quite fit in with the 6 Harmonies gym. Plus, the 6 Harmonies gym is by the sea. It's too inconvenient to pass through the city. Worker Zhai had considered everything thoroughly. He clearly cared a lot about this kid, Weiwu. Then, have you chosen a target? The first step is to consider the Thunder Falcon Dojo. It has a branch in the Forest Wall district, and the main branch is located in the River Wu district. One is convenient, the other is skilled, and the instructor has real skills. Thunder Falcon. Luo Nan and Xue Lei glanced at each other. Their expressions were a bit odd. Wasn't this the martial arts gym that instructor Feng Jiejun was at back in Ocean Sky Cloud City? It seemed that Xiao Xinyu had quite a bit of enmity with that place. Luo Nan and Xue Lei were nervous for a few days after the incident, but Xiao Xinyu didn't care at all. There was no further news from Xiao Xinyu, and they gradually forgot about it. Now that they heard Worker Zhai mention it, they felt quite odd. However, the Divine Yu gym was closed for business. The two weren't petty people, so they didn't say much. The 100-knot worm had already arrived at the restaurant they had reserved. It was located in the River Wu district, and it had a bit of fame. Though it was almost 9 o'clock, the restaurant was still nearly full. Even though they had reservations, the four still had to wait in line for a while before it was their turn. But it would take some time for the dishes to be served, so Luo Nan wanted to order a drink. But Di Weiwu didn't appreciate it at all. I don't want to touch that trash. Water is fine. This was strange. Was there a kid who didn't like to drink? Chapter 433. Di Weiwu said this, but when the main course of the dining hall was served, Di Weiwu adopted the posture of sweeping away the clouds like a whirlwind. He buried his head in his plate, unwilling to lift it up. He had ample reason for this. My body is growing, so I must ingest sufficient nutrients. Even if it's a bit excessive, I can digest it through training. As he spoke, the kid even patted Worker Zhai's arm. That's why I'm quite grateful to you, Godfather. Whether it's a thunderhawk or a swift, it's always good to have a place to digest the accumulated food. Worker Zhai had to hold his forehead at Luo Nan's aged appearance. Luckily, the kid soon threw himself into a new plate, and Worker Zhai had the opportunity to talk to Luo Nan about other things. I've tested the move you spoke of last time. It really is effective. My soul strength and interference power have both grown. Huh? Luo Nan didn't react at all. Worker Zhai simply spoke the truth when he saw Luo Nan like this. He looked at the cup of water in front of him with rapt attention. 2 seconds later, a drop of water the size of a fingernail rose from the cup, hovering above the rim. Luo Nan finally understood. Wasn't this the effect of the condensation ring he spoke to Papercut about when they were waiting last time? It's done. Before Worker Zhai could finish speaking, the drop of water above the rim of the cup collapsed and scattered. Worker Zhai's face was a bit pale, and a layer of sweat seeped from his forehead. This technique clearly consumed a lot of energy for him. Of course, 10 days ago, he wouldn't even be able to touch the edge of this move with his unawakened level. Worker Zhai wiped away his sweat. In a non-combat state, it can last for approximately 1 seconds. As for the combat state, there was no need to talk about it. 2 seconds of preparation time was practically meaningless in actual combat. Hold on. Let me think. The Sansho training Luo Nan received consumed too much mental energy. Chatting normally was fine, but he needed to compose himself and refocus his attention if he wanted to talk business. Half a minute later, he said, the volume of this condensation ring is too large. Its diameter is nearly 0.3 millimeters. It needs to be a bit smaller to increase the stability of the structure. Xue Lei poked Luo Nan's arm when he saw the two begin their discussion. The dining hall's partitions were pretty good, so they didn't need to worry about other people seeing them. Don't forget that the kid Di Weiwu was right next to them. Di Weiwu was very sensitive about such things. He immediately glared at Xue Lei. Isn't it just extraordinary power? What's there to hide? Xue Lei let out and choked. Di Weiwu disdainfully said, it's only you young ladies and young masters in the city who bury your faces in the sand like ostriches. As long as it's a vagrant who has fought in the wilderness, who wouldn't know? As he spoke, the kid pouted at Worker Zhai. If it weren't for the fact that he has this kind of ability, I wouldn't have liked him. Worker Zhai couldn't take it anymore and slapped the back of the little guy's head. Don't talk nonsense. Di Weiwu immediately glared at him, but was defeated by Worker Zhai's gaze. Mumbling, he buried his face in his plate and continued to dig in. Luo Nan wasn't particularly surprised by this sort of thing. He just sighed with emotion. In a certain sense, the so-called high wall between the inner world and the normal world is as thin as a piece of paper. Xue Lei, on the other hand, was stimulated by this piece of information. His train of thought jumped to another level. Worker Zhai, you want the little guy to learn martial arts because you want him to enter this circle? Yes, this will depend on his aptitude. Naturally, it would be ideal if he could gain a comprehensive understanding of the world. But in this case, building a foundation is extremely important. He can't go and mess around. Worker Zhai nodded in agreement. This is indeed the case, but I don't know if he has the talent in this area. What path he will take in the future is still undecided. I'm not afraid of that. With the guidance of a famous teacher and his willingness to put in effort, he'll more or less know the difference in talent in 3 to 5 months. Nothing will be delayed. Shui Lei could be said to be more than half an expert in this area. Just like this, the two opened up a new topic of conversation. Worker Zhai forgot to talk about the condensation ring. He really did care a lot about his adopted son. Luo Nan was tossed aside. He simply learned from Di Weiwu, burying his head in food and replenishing his energy. On the other side, Di Weiwu looked like he was full. He looked over with wide eyes. His gaze was completely within Luo Nan's senses. After being stared at for a long time, Luo Nan felt uncomfortable. He raised his head and asked, "What's wrong? It seems like you're quite capable." "I'm all right." "How do you compare to him?" Di Weigua secretly pointed at Worker Zhai. "Your adopted father." "Oh, we each have our strong points. Worker Zhai has been teaching me engineering all this time." Di Weigua directly interrupted, "In other words, you're stronger than him in terms of extraordinary strength?" Were kids these days all this straightforward? Di Weiwu noticed Luo Nan's gaze and glanced at Worker Zhai. He saw this enthusiastic adopted father earnestly asking for guidance from Shui Lei. He was just short of taking notes. Di Weiwu felt that speaking too bluntly wasn't good, so he simply walked around the table and sat next to Luo Nan. "Hey, if you're really capable, then teach me. You just said that extraordinary strength isn't that amazing." "Bullshit. You misinterpreted my words. Do you have any sincerity?" Luo Nan continued to tease him, "You speak vulgarities the moment you open your mouth. Where's your sincerity? It's fine if you don't want to teach me. I don't care. Also, it's my fault for speaking vulgarities. I'll apologize to you." Pfft. Di Weiwu feigned magnanimity, but unfortunately, he couldn't hold it in. Luo Nan couldn't help but grin at this honest kid. He casually rubbed Worker Zhai's head, "Teaching you really isn't a big deal, but I'm afraid that I won't teach you well. Especially when it comes to laying the foundation. You still need to find a good teacher. Since you have the skill, why can't you teach me well?" Di Weiwu finally asked a childish question that suited his age. Luo Nan wanted to answer seriously, but he felt that it was too complicated. He thought for a bit and said, "Well, teaching students requires a lot of energy. I'm still studying. I have to work. There are many other things. I'm often distracted. I'm not focused." So he was tossed around miserably today. Di Weiwu blinked his eyes, "Not focused. I can teach you this. What's with that look in your eyes? You don't believe me, right? I learned my true skills from Dean Wan. All you need to do is follow the method I taught you and seriously observe the precepts for a period of time. Attention, concentration, and so on. It's absolutely this." He stuck up his thumb and wiggled it in front of Luo Nan's eyes. "Dean Wan." Luo Nan finally couldn't hold it in anymore at this time. "The Dean Wan you're talking about, is he the one in the recycling stratum of the Forest Wall District? Is he the one who often gives people? The one who teaches?" "Huh. You know." Di Weiwu was shocked. "I have 2 friends who have received guidance from Dean Wan. I don't know if you recognize them or not. One is surnamed Xie, and the other. The one with the surname Du is a sissy, right?" Di Weiwu laughed, "Ha. They've been going to the institute quite often recently. They've donated quite a bit of money. Thanks to their blessings, I'll be able to live a bit more comfortably over there in the future." Chapter 434. Children's senses and emotions changed very quickly. Di Weiwu originally didn't like Luo Nan very much. But now that they had a common topic of conversation, Dean Wan, and their positions were relatively close, Diweiwu's attitude was completely different with just a few words. Luo Nan actually wanted to ask about the creation order, but he swallowed his words in the end. From his perspective, it was better for children to stay away from religion. Even though the little fellow had been deeply influenced by Dean Wan, he still wasn't a little saint who talked about the teachings of the creation order. This was good enough. It wasn't just Diweiwu. Du Yong and Xie Junping didn't seem to be brainwashed. It was for this reason that Luo Nan had a pretty good impression of the creation order. The only thing he wasn't sure about right now was whether or not Worker Zhai knew about the creation order. Worker Zhai was a bit surprised when he found an opportunity to ask, Dean Wan is an ability user? Or a member of the order? You don't know. I've only met him twice. We didn't talk for long. I just remember that he was nimble with his hands. Some of the handicrafts he made were of a very high level. Some of the models had outstanding structures, proportions, and precision. Really? Luo Nan had a pensive look. Could it be that the so-called creation was just a literal meaning and not the meaning of a creator? Worker Zhai had a good impression of Dean Wan. I think there shouldn't be a problem. Dean Wan has a good personality. Diweiwu, who had been eavesdropping, shouted, of course there's no problem with Dean Wan. Are you guys spies? Why are you asking so many questions? Luo Nan laughed. No, I'm just curious. People in our circle talk about all sorts of things, but we're all connected. Isn't it fate? The little fellow was quite satisfied with this explanation. He patted Luo Nan on the shoulder, pretending to be generous. There's definitely fate. Actually, if you guys are interested in Dean Wan, you can go talk to him. You don't need to pick a time. Tonight is fine. You guys can send me to the orphanage. I'll live there. Diweiwu felt a bit guilty when he said this. Actually, the main reason for his proposal was that he didn't want to return to the Trigate district, a place where he couldn't find any fun. Luo Nan, Xue Lei, and Worker Zhai exchanged glances. The restaurant was located on the west side of the River Wu district. It wouldn't take much time to get there. Half a minute later, Diweiwu's suggestion took effect. Both the host and the guest enjoyed the meal. Diweiwu, who claimed to be temperate, went out holding his stomach. After leaving the restaurant, they walked a short distance to the nearest bus stop. The orphanage was located in the Forest Wall District's recycling layer. The centipedes normally wouldn't go there, so only low-altitude public transportation was on the way. Diweiwu took advantage of this time to instill Luo Nan with the superiority of the concept of upholding the precepts. As long as you can persevere, it won't be long before you'll discover that you're super efficient at doing things. Your memory will be excellent, and you'll be able to multitask. Oh. I'm not lying to you. There were a few times when Dean Wan talked to a few of us at the same time. Everyone had a different topic, but he never messed up his answers. Of course, that's an even more powerful technique. I think it's called coordination. Overall planning. Luo Nan was a bit moved. He was faced with a myriad of things to worry about. What he lacked the most right now was the ability to plan and arrange. He always felt that he didn't have enough time. When he did one thing, he would be dragged down by another. His concentration was severely lacking. There was no need for Gym Master Xiao to lecture him. He was already tired of it. Luo Nan's wristband vibrated as he was thinking. Someone called. Luo Nan's eyelids jumped when he saw the caller's name. It matched his terrible premonition. Moya opened her mouth and said, Nanster, remember to tell him when you get home. I won't be going home tonight. Luo Nan quivered when he heard this. He instinctively raised his voice, go find Mo Peng. I won't be going home tonight either. Where will you be staying if you're not going home? I'm in the River Wu district. Where do you think I'll be staying? Blue Bay? Then you should go home. I'm commandeering this place tonight. Luo Nan was so angry that his teeth hurt. He gnashed his teeth and said, "Emoya, don't go too far. I really want to leave you a bedding, but there are a few beauties here. They aren't willing." Someone suddenly came over and shouted, "Who said that? If you're a handsome guy, then come over. Big sis will love you. Get lost." Emoya pushed her flirtatious friend to the side. She chuckled and asked Luo Nan, "Are you coming over? I'm going to stay at a hotel. In any case, I absolutely won't go home and take the blame for you." Luo Nan directly hung up the phone. Actually, he let out a breath of relief. He was really worried that a man's voice would be heard in the background. Emoya's heart had really gone wild after taking a stroll around the Mansion Music Festival. She hadn't spent more than 5 days at home in the half a month that she had been back in Xia City. She spent most of her time outside, making her ant hopping mad. Unfortunately, she had already graduated to adulthood. She possessed the ability to act, and she always had her own opinions. Her family couldn't control her even if they wanted to. It must be said that Emoya's personality and temperament were trustworthy, but the underground music circle was famous for being chaotic. Luo Nan's heart twitched, not to mention his aunt and uncle. He was afraid that his cousin would fall into that chaotic circle. If this continued, Luo Nan would need to mobilize the society's channels to properly investigate. Well, this was another troublesome side issue. Luo Nan unconsciously sighed. Di Weiwu prodded him from the side, "Your sister." "Yeah. Their relationship isn't too good?" "Oh, you can't say that." Luo Nan shot a glance at him. "You little brat, what are you trying to do with your bemoaning and pitying face?" Di Weiwu patted Luo Nan. He was limited in size, so he could only pat the crook of Luo Nan's arm. "You need to have a good relationship with your family. Don't get into fights so easily." Luo Nan's first reaction was to laugh, but he instantly thought that this cheerful and arrogant kid in front of him was an orphan who had lost all of his family. His smile unconsciously froze on his face. Di Weiwu didn't care at all. He casually changed the topic, "Hey, look over there. It looks like another Thunder Falcon dojo." They were already standing at the bus stop right now. A large video of the Thunder Falcon dojo was displayed on an advertisement in the commercial center across the street. The visual effects were quite impactful. Worker Zhai led to another train of thought. The Thunder Falcon dojo has been expanding quite a bit recently. It's said that they have a military background. Look at this advertisement. It looks like they're using this as a selling point. Are the fighting techniques of the military suitable for children? Luo Nan and Xue Lei glanced at each other. The military? Xue Lei didn't deliberately belittle the Thunder Falcon dojo just because it was possible that his master had a grudge against the Thunder Falcon dojo. He answered honestly, there's no need to compare fighting techniques between the military and the civilian population. In terms of systematization and general standards, the military's techniques certainly exceed those of the civilian population by a large margin. The dojo master also said that after the Third War, the military paid great attention to the inheritance and development of physical techniques. Some of the methods used to nurture the younger generation are worth learning from. Really? Then Weiwu. Based on Weiwu's age alone, I suggest that no matter where he learns, it's best to start with Daoyin. From movement to stillness, from shallow to deep. If his energy sense is up to standard, then he can achieve circulatory Daoyin, or even both movement and stillness in a single semester. But it's not that easy to achieve, link up step by step. Xue Lei needed to further explain when it came to some specialized terms. A group of men and women walked over from behind the bus stop at this time. One of them glanced over and laughed out loud. Chapter 435. Worker Zhai stared blankly for a moment before realizing that he had become the target of ridicule. He turned his head to look. There were 6 or 7 people over there, all around 20 or 30 years old. They were all smiling right now, but it was hard to tell who had spoken just now. Half of these people wore the same uniform. On the right chest was an abstract image of a bird. It looked like twisted lightning. Worker Zhai knew where these people came from when he saw this logo. Thunder Falcon Dojo. There was an escalator bridge a short distance away from the bus stop. It just so happened to lead to the newly launched branch dojo under the advertisement space of the shopping mall. This group of people must have taken advantage of the opening of the dojo to drink and celebrate. Luo Nan and Xue Lei knew a bit more than Worker Zhai. They had already locked onto the person who had just spoken. The fellow's face was a bit red, and he was staggering a bit as he walked. It was clear that he had drunk too much. But even so, they were able to recognize that they had met this person once before. Feng Jiejun, the dojo instructor who had hung out with He Donglu at Ocean Sky Cloud City. From then on, he radiated an abnormal hostility towards Xue Lei and the divine Yu Jim. Luo Nan's field of view was a bit wider. Aside from this group of people, he also noticed that there was another person who was on the phone 20 to 30 meters away. This person was originally on the same line as Feng Jiejun and the others. He was just distracted, so he fell behind. This fellow was also an acquaintance. Luo Nan and Xue Lei were unwilling to pay attention to a drunkard like Feng Jiejun. Worker Zhai had an easygoing personality. He just furrowed his brows and didn't say anything. He even hugged Di Weiwu to prevent the kid from causing trouble. It had to be said that Worker Zhai understood his adopted son's personality very well. Even though he hugged Di Weiwu in time, words still came out of Di Weiwu's mouth. "Who the hell are you?" Feng Jiejun was currently tipsy. He laughed and took 2 steps forward. He extended his hand to touch Di Weiwu's head, but Di Weiwu avoided him. He snorted and pointed his arm at Xue Lei, unwilling to let him go. "Coach Xue, your dojo can't continue operating anymore. There's no need to push people into a pit, right?" Clearly, Feng Jiejun's eyes and ears were half-baked after he was drunk. He didn't hear the first half of Xue Lei's words, which was tantamount to talking about his own dojo. Di Weiwu immediately laughed out loud. Then, he raised his head and complained to Worker Zhai, "You picked all over the place. Thunder Falcon and Lightning Bird? They're not that great." Even he himself said that he was tricked. Feng Jiejun was no longer able to tell that Worker Zhai and his son were in cahoots with Luo Nan and Xue Lei. He really did have a problem with his brain. His expression immediately turned cold, and he glared at Di Weiwu. The little fellow's reaction was very fast, and her mouth was even more unforgiving. This person must be born in the year of the dog. He can change his face so easily. Worker Zhai smiled bitterly. He tightened his grip on the boy's arm so that he wouldn't let him continue tormenting him. Xue Lei also smiled and showed his talent for communication. "Don't mention coach, I'm still far from that level. Usually, I just receive clients and shake hands with people." "Nice to meet you again, Coach Feng." Feng Jiejun's expression became even more unsightly. Xue Lei's words were undoubtedly an allusion to the fact that he had taken the initiative to shake hands with Ocean Sky Cloud City to probe for information, and had even suffered a loss. Xue Lei was also mocking him for not being qualified to be a coach. What made him even more embarrassed was that Xue Lei casually extended his hand as he spoke. It was as if he was going to shake hands with Feng Jiejun again. Feng Jiejun had already sobered up. He was weaker than Xue Lei by more than a level, at least in terms of strength. Only a month had passed, and his strength was still the same. How could he be willing to lose face in front of his junior brothers and sisters? After hesitating for a second, Feng Jiejun finally extended his hand and slapped Xue Lei's hand away. "What's the rush? On the day of the winter solstice, in the battle to establish our reputation, I will naturally ask for your guidance." It would have been better if he hadn't said these words. Luo Nan's and Xue Lei's fierce gazes pierced his face at the same time. The gazes of the two were different. Xue Lei's gaze was filled with a divine light of vitality. Feng Jiejun's willpower was enough to resist it. However, Luo Nan was clearly wearing contact lenses. His eye sockets were permeated with a false luster, but behind that luster was an indescribable warping power. It made Feng Jiejun tense up all of a sudden. He unconsciously took half a step back and adopted a defensive stance. The group of men and women traveling with Feng Jiejun were a bit stupefied in the beginning. They didn't know why their senior brother suddenly didn't like these people. However, when Feng Jiejun took up his stance, the quick-witted ones understood. 4 or 5 people immediately surrounded him. Xue Lei faced these people without the slightest fear. He took a large step forward and stood in front of Luo Nan and the Zhai father and son. His eyebrows were furrowed in anger, and his aura didn't yield in the slightest. Di Weiwu became excited when he saw this scene. He struggled to free his head from Worker Zhai's arms and said loudly, "What does it have to do with you that other people are fishing? A dog that goes around randomly biting won't attract people's attention no matter how long its tongue is. It's better if you wag your tail more, loser." The child's voice was bright and clear. Feng Jiejun's face turned green on the spot. He forgot to ponder over Luo Nan's gaze. His drunkenness added to his anger, and he exploded in one go. He blurted out, "Shut up, you little bastard. Bastard your mother." Ugh! Di Weiwu wanted to curse back, but Worker Zhai covered his mouth. However, Worker Zhai's words were half-spoken, and it was enough to burn away the last bit of Feng Jiejun's reason. He cursed vaguely and charged forward with large strides. Feng Jiejun moved, and the half-formed encirclement naturally shrank. The people of the Thunder Falcon Dojo all had the most basic of offensive and defensive awareness. They naturally attacked when they were close, seizing the initiative. A chaotic battle suddenly erupted. And then it ended. Feng Jiejun's fist made contact with Xue Lei's elbow, and the surrounding companions fell to the ground in a mess. They didn't even struggle before they fainted. Feng Jiejun's heart skipped a beat when he saw this scene. His energy was a bit chaotic, and Xue Lei took advantage of the situation to wrap his arm and lock his wrist. An enormous force like that of a lion and tiger pressed over, locking half of Feng Jiejun's body in place. Feng Jiejun's face instantly turned ashen. He was in a worse state than he was at Ocean Sky Cloud City. He had just touched Xue Lei, and he was utterly defeated. If news of this got out, his reputation in the industry would pretty much be finished. Xue Lei spoke next to his ear, "Why bother with a child?" Before Xue Lei could finish speaking, a voice suddenly came over, "The two of you don't need to bother with a group of drunkards." Only now did Xue Lei discover the person behind him. He frowned slightly. Behind him, Luo Nan slapped Xue Lei's waist. Xue Lei understood, and his hands skillfully pushed Feng Jiejun back a few steps. At this time, the person who had fallen behind due to the phone call finally walked to the bus stop. His face was a bit grave and stern, but he was indeed an acquaintance. Zhu Ling, the son of a military family in Xia City. He was the subordinate of Blood Prison Tian Bang, who was currently in the limelight. He had crossed paths with Luo Nan and the others a few days ago at Aurora Cloud City. His younger cousin, Zhu Maoxuan, had an old grudge with Luo Nan, but Zhu Maoxuan himself had quite the strength and ideas. Chapter 436. Seeing Zhu Ling appear, Luo Nan knew that it was impossible for the conflict to continue. This rising star of the military had a typical, planning before taking action, personality. Since he had spoken, he must have done some observation. He simply ignored Feng Jiejun and the others. He directly greeted Luo Nan and Xue Lei, "Mr. Luo, Mr. Xue, Jia Jun," and the others lost their composure after drinking. They really shouldn't have. I apologize on their behalf. That's nothing. Luo Nan responded casually. He looked at Zhu Ling's speech and mannerisms, and a strange thought suddenly popped into his mind. It seems like you're always wiping the butts of others. You should clean up your circle of friends if you have nothing to do. It was better to put an end to this meaningless conflict as soon as possible. Luo Nan wasn't prepared to talk much with Zhu Ling. He also didn't want to get tangled up with Feng Jiejun, this drunkard. Luo Nan spoke without thinking, then he extended his hand and made a, "please help yourself," gesture. Seeing this, Zhu Ling smiled and signaled Feng Jiejun and the others to move forward and leave the bus stop. His position in this group was very high, and he could see that Feng Jiejun was somewhat afraid. Even though he was still deeply dissatisfied, he was still dragged away by his companions. From the look in his eyes as he left, this hatred was firmly settled. Zhu Ling nodded at the two again, not intending to prolong the conversation. He followed closely behind Feng Jiejun and the others, turning to leave. However, after taking a few steps, he turned around and said, "Duan Hong of the Thunder Falcon Dojo was once Senior Colonel Meng Tu's comrade in arms. But he's retired now." "Comrade?" "It's still in a lab." In other words, that gym master surnamed Duan was a burner. Zhu Ling's intention in saying this was not only to reveal some information but also to clarify the relationship between the Thunder Falcon Dojo and them. However, this relationship was limited to a certain range. Clearly, he also knew of the Winter Solstice Challenge. He knew of the close relationship between Xiu Xinyu, Luo Nan, and Xue Lei. This feeling of being the last to know was really not good. Seeing Zhu Ling and the others leave, Xue Lei suddenly blurted out, "I want to go back and take a look." "I want to ask the dojo master," Luo Nan responded, "I'll go with you." "Don't." With the dojo master's personality, he definitely won't say anything if you go. "Then I'll help you ask Sister Yueyin. This matter shouldn't be hidden from her." "Alright, thank you." Luo Nan reached out his hand to give him a poke, telling him not to say such extravagant words. Xue Lei forced a smile. At this moment, he was very worried. In terms of martial arts attainments, it wasn't a problem for Xiu Xinyu to leave these two youths far behind. But he had been sick and weak all these years, and he was so emaciated, how could anyone feel at ease fighting with him? He called for a flying 100-knot bug and left in a hurry. It was already deep into the night. Only Luo Nan and the Zhai family's father and son could get on the bus stop. Seeing Xue Lei leave, Di Weiwu was actually a little disappointed, but he still said, "Are you still going to the orphanage?" Luo Nan was a bit hesitant, but the long-awaited low-altitude public transport finally arrived at the station at this time. When he saw Di Weiwu's pitiful eyes, his heart softened. "I'll go take a look." In any case, it was destined that he wouldn't be returning home tonight. There was no need for him to personally ask He Yueyin about the matter. It could be settled on a low-altitude public transport. He could just treat it as coaxing a child. After getting on the public transport, the first thing Luo Nan did was ask his aunt for a leave of absence. He was a bit apprehensive in his heart, mainly because he had overlooked a point just now. If Mo Ye had first mentioned the matter of him not returning home, then he would have hit the muzzle of a gun. Luckily, his luck was pretty good tonight. He could hear his aunt's voice. Mo Ye hadn't exerted herself. His performance had been good during this time, and his body was becoming healthier and healthier. This was a plus. His aunt only hesitated for a moment before agreeing. Luo Nan let out a long breath. After hanging up, he immediately contacted He Yueyin without stopping. The god of luck was still watching over him, and the connection was made rather smoothly. He Yueyin was silent for a moment after hearing Luo Nan's explanation. Then she responded, "From the monetary accounts, the Thunder Falcon Dojo has purchased a portion of the Castle Financial Group's assets in Xia City at a low price in the past few days. The timing is quite good, and there's a tacit understanding with the military's actions." Zhu Ling has admitted to this as well. "But I don't understand right now. What's going on with the Battle of Winter's Solstice?" He Yueyin was silent for a few seconds before saying, "There's a grudge between Xiu Xinyu and Duan Hong, but both sides are acting according to the rules. It was like this 10 years ago, and it's still like this 10 years later. It's best if we don't get involved. I still have things to do. I'm hanging up. Hello. Hello." Luo Nan and He Yueyin had known each other for many years, but he had never been hung up so quickly before. He was a bit stupefied for a time. Perhaps she really did have something urgent to do. The low-altitude public transport entered the forest wall district in this muddle-headed state. After 7 or 8 stops, they arrived at the stop closest to the orphanage. Then they only needed to walk another 300 meters. Just from the route alone, the Thunder Falcon Dojo was quite compatible with the newly opened branch dojo. But worker Zhai wouldn't send Di Weiwu there to be tortured no matter what. 5 minutes later, Luo Nan stood in front of the orphanage that he had scanned with his telepathic thoughts. Luo Nan was quite curious about the Din Wan that the Zhai father and son spoke of, and the guide that Xie Junping and Du Yong spoke of. He really wanted to know what was so special about this person, aside from the face of the preacher that he had sensed before. But when they knocked on the door, they heard this piece of news: Din Wan went out. It looks like he accepted an invitation. Nurse Wang of the orphanage was acquainted with the Zhai father and son. This old woman understood the ways of the world. She welcomed them in and greeted them warmly. This orphanage was reconstructed from the lower level of an abandoned shopping mall. Relatively speaking, it was already a relatively safe place on the recycling stratum. Over 20 rooms were separated, and 30 or so people lived there. All of them were teenagers and children under the age of 14. Most of them should have been asleep at this time, but Di Weiwu's arrival caused quite a few of his little friends to become excited in an instant. They chattered noisily, forcing Nurse Wang to use the name of the dean to suppress them. Everything was settled down with great difficulty. Nurse Wang took the place of Dean Wan and fulfilled her duties as the host. She led worker Zhai and Luo Nan around the orphanage. Luo Nan's impression of this place gradually grew clearer. In his eyes, the deepest impression that the overall layout of the orphanage gave people was that it was simple yet extremely stylish. For example, the reception room. There were crisscrossing pipes overhead, but the entire floor was painted ash gray. There were wooden frames of the same color on the walls, and there were short tables of the same color on the floor. There were also 2 half-worn peach-colored sofas and a recliner that came from God knows where. The fruit platter on the short table was in the shape of an extremely interesting ladle. The light emitted from the iron cover hanging from the ceiling made people feel extremely comfortable. Chapter 437. Actually, in the 20 years since the construction of Gear, students and society members of different batches had come and gone like a horse lantern. Most of the time, Gear was not short on money. Interior renovation was a common thing. The interior decorations before Luo Nan took over were already beyond recognition from the very beginning. The interior renovation project of Gear was about to begin during this time. Luo Nan held many renovation blueprints in his hands, but he was unable to grasp them. He felt that the designer's tricks did not match with his mother's great works. But now he saw the layout of the reception room, and he was inexplicably pleased. Of course, this was not to say that moving this room to Gear was pleasing to the eye. It was just that this was how it should feel at this time and place. The interior layout would not make people forget that this was an abandoned shopping mall located in the dangerous recycling stratum. But sitting here and casually touching it was a relaxing atmosphere that made people cherish it even more. Especially when he heard Nurse Wang say that most of the furniture and decorations here were personally arranged and built by Dean Wan and the children. Luo Nan felt even more admiration. Even if such a person was involved in a secret order, it would be hard for people to feel ill will towards him. But looking at it from another angle, it seemed that worker Zhai still had a rather difficult path to walk in order to make Di Weiwu truly believe in his godfather. Afraid of delaying the children's rest, Luo Nan and worker Zhai did not stay for long. They walked one round around the orphanage before saying their goodbyes and leaving. As before, they took the 24-hour low-altitude public bus and embarked on their return journey. Worker Zhai finally had some free time on the bus. He talked to Luo Nan about proper business, the dynamo core that he was researching. Right now, the dynamic structure mode has been basically determined. The simulation results are pretty good. But the bottleneck lies in the materials. I want to find you to confirm it. If possible, I suggest we use the method of dismantling and mending. Dismantling. East wall to repair west wall. Yes. If this dynamo core is only used for the Tai Chi ball, there is actually a large amount of redundancy in its functionality. We can use this point to cut off other unimportant branches to mend the gap. Luo Nan said, you'll have to ask Shui Lei about this. Or you can just ask the gym master to make a decision. Sure. Tell me when you get back. I can do a few more simulations. Speaking of Xiao Xinyu, Luo Nan remembered the Battle of Winter Solstice. He immediately called Shui Lei to ask about the situation. Shui Lei picked up the call quickly, but he also hung up quickly. His progress was terrible. The only thing that could be confirmed was that Dojo Master Xiao had received Duan Hong's letter of challenge a long time ago. However, he had kept his mouth shut, clearly not intending to tell anyone. This was troublesome. Luo Nan got off the low-altitude bus after it entered the River Wu district. He needed to transfer to another bus, while worker Zhai could take the bus all the way back to Xiqing district. The air near the recycling stratum was a bit stuffy. Luo Nan checked the map of Xia City with his wristband. Mo Ye had already taken over his place and occupied his house in Blue Bay community. Now, he was homeless. Choosing a hotel to stay in had become a top priority. Luo Nan stood on the side of the road for less than half a minute. His finger swiped a few times on the virtual screen and a private car stopped beside him. The door opened and the driver called out, Mr. Luo. Brother Qin, sorry to trouble you. The one who drove over was naturally driver Qin, who was in charge of Luo Nan's security work. Luo Nan grew more and more familiar with him during this time. Luo Nan learned that his real name was Qin Ikuan. The two of them got along quite well and often discussed martial arts issues. The security team by Luo Nan's side was already on the road. Normally, when Luo Nan was traveling with other people, he would only follow in the shadows. He would only appear when he was traveling alone. A month's time was considered peaceful, and both sides were quite satisfied. Luo Nan sat in the car and let out a breath. He introduced his schedule for tonight. I'm not going home today. I'm going to find a hotel to stay in. Qin Ikuan didn't say much. He just asked, where are we going? Luo Nan apologized first, I've caused trouble for you guys. It's really hard to find an employer like Mr. Luo who travels between 2 and 3 places. Luo Nan laughed. He already had a plan in mind, then let's go to Ocean Sky Cloud City. It'll be convenient for everyone. Qin Ikuan thought for a bit and quickly understood. He smiled and started the car. After driving for a while, Luo Nan suddenly spoke, Brother Qin, have you heard any news about the winter solstice battle in Lyoha Gym? The one from the Thunder Falcon Dojo? You know about it. I mainly know about Duan Hong. Oh, Duan Hong is the master of the Thunder Falcon Dojo. When I was studying at Lyoha Gym, he was already quite famous in Xia City. He once visited Mr. Giant Arm and asked for a spar. Luo Nan was shocked. He asked in a hurry, you won? You lost? A crushing defeat. Hee hee. That's not unexpected. Yeah. He was far weaker than Mr. Giant Arm at the time. However, there aren't many people in Xia City who can make Mr. Giant Arm agree to fight. That's true. What happened to him later? I'm not too sure about that. It's just that the concept of the winter solstice battle has suddenly been hyped up in the industry. Only then did I know that he lost a bet 10 years ago. He went far away to train. Now that he's accomplished something, he's come back to get back at us. Luo Nan let out an, oh, and didn't say anything more. The journey was smooth. They arrived at Ocean Sky Cloud City in about 20 minutes. The atmosphere in the large living area was a bit worse than it was a dozen days ago. The collapse of Aurora Cloud City's parking lot had scared quite a few people. Right now, the construction team was still working on the repairs. The security team had already helped Luo Nan check in on the way here. Luo Nan and Chi Nikuan went straight upstairs after getting off the car. Chi Nikuan specifically chose a high-altitude bedroom on the 150th floor. Ocean Sky Cloud City's most famous viewing platform was a few floors down. That's right. Luo Nan chose Ocean Sky Cloud City not just because this place was only a few steps away from Acumen College. It would save him quite a bit of trouble when he went to school tomorrow morning. More importantly, there was a flying devil ray that he could use here. Luo Nan and Chi Nikuan just came out of the elevator when they saw the water within the central crystal pillar stir. The enormous body of the devil ray was like a bomber flying through the water. It swept past the crystal wall closest to the elevator and greeted Luo Nan. So this is an infrasonic wave generator. Chi Nikuan was a bit moved. With the flying devil ray as a tool, Luo Nan's combat strength could already be evaluated as AB+ rank. Moreover, the sky was his main battlefield. He could come and go as he pleased. So from Luo Nan's perspective, this place was probably the safest place in Xia City aside from President Ouyang's laboratory. Chi Nikuan obviously understood Luo Nan's intentions. He was very grateful for this. In a public place like a hotel, any security team would have a relatively thorough contingency plan. It saved him a lot of effort. I'll be next door. Mr. Luo, just call me if you need anything. There shouldn't be anything. I'll go take a stroll on the viewing platform in a bit. I'll go with you. Chi Nikuan didn't forget that this 16-year-old youth's battle had taken place there. Even if Luo Nan didn't believe that headquarters would send people over to make a move, he still had to prevent certain people from losing their minds and going crazy, right? Luo Nan didn't mind. He entered the room and gave a rough glance before coming out and heading to the viewing platform. There were people coming down from the upper floor when he entered the elevator. There were 7 or 8 of them, and the elevator was half full. They seemed to be quite familiar with each other. They were all talking. They should be attending a gathering or something at the same time. The gathering was over right now. Chapter 438. Huh. Luo Nan's ears perked up when he heard a rather familiar word. The speaker's voice was actually quite soft. It wasn't very obvious in the exchange of greetings between the group of people, but it couldn't be hidden from ability users like Luo Nan and Chi Nikuan. Chi Nikuan had done his homework quite well. He noticed Luo Nan's expression, so he shot a glance in that direction and raised his spirits. As for Luo Nan, he didn't need to turn his head at all within this narrow space. He could distinguish everyone's faces purely by relying on his mental senses. Then he noticed a familiar face. What a coincidence. The person who spoke in front continued, with this skill, we must continue to work hard and make a name for ourselves as soon as possible. In this day and age, the most undesirable thing is to be pretentious. If we have the ability, we must show it to others. Let's not go back first. Let's go to the viewing platform to get some fresh air and have a deep chat. At this time, the elevator went down to the 142nd floor, where the viewing platform was. The elevator door opened, and Luo Nan and Chi Nikuan glanced at each other. Chi Nikuan extended his hand to indicate for Luo Nan to go first. Luo Nan nodded and went out first, but he felt that Chi Nikuan's reaction was a bit off. He paid attention to the target, but that was all. His level of vigilance did not keep up. Luo Nan ignored what was behind him after walking out of the elevator. He walked straight in the direction of the viewing binoculars. His behavior was quite natural, but at the same time, he privately contacted Chi Nikuan through the Hexeer ability user. What? Which one? The one who didn't speak. If it weren't for Chi Nikuan's well-trained training, he would have turned around and left. At this moment, 2 more people came out of the elevator and turned in the direction of the heavenly ocean lake. They were the 2 people who wanted to have a deep chat. Qin Ikuan listened carefully to the man's footsteps. At the same time, he tried his best to sense, but he did not discover anything new. I can't sense anything at all. Yes, he hit it very well. If Luo Nan hadn't been able to see the scene of this person preaching from afar through his mental senses, he would have inadvertently missed this person. The most amazing thing was that the other party didn't seem to be deliberately concealing it. Instead, in the most natural state, it restrained all the abnormal aura and maintained the most harmonious state with the surrounding environment, just like his work. At this time, the conversation on the other side was going on. The person who spoke earlier seemed to be very impatient. As soon as he stood still, he said in an especially excited tone, "I've already thought about it. I'll use concepts like the meditation club or the oxygen bar." Although it sounds like it's all over the place, as long as there's a living example like Xie Junping, those elites and rich second-generation heirs who've had enough fun will still flock to him. The so-called second young master of the Xie clan was indeed Xie Junping. Luo Nan was certain in his heart. He walked to the edge of the platform. It looked like he was admiring the night scenery, but his mental senses enveloped the entire platform. The man who had been silent for a long time finally spoke. He did not seem to be very enthusiastic about it. Director Wu, this Director Wu was probably a director of some company. When he talked about business, he could not stop talking. He interrupted him and said, "I can tell that you don't have any concept. Did you know that this was the way of the Castlevania Financial Group? Have you heard of the Castle Financial Group? No. Then you should have heard of the brand Shinda, right? Sportswear. That's right. There are also a few others." Director Wu casually mentioned 3 or 4 brands with world or regional fame. These are all intangible assets of the Castle Financial Group. Just these alone have a market value of over 10 billion. And I just heard some news recently. Standing behind this financial group is a hoarder. What do you think? I don't have any thoughts. I don't understand what you mean. I want you to pay attention to the interesting chemical reaction that will occur when an order and capital are added. I also know Mrs. Halder of the Castle Financial Group. She's a skilled trader, but I believe that I'm not inferior to her. But 10 days ago, the assets under her banner were over 5 times mine. Director Wu spent a few minutes describing the relationship between the Castle Financial Group and the Blood Flame Order. From what Luo Nan knew of the inside story, there were many elements of hearsay in Director Wu's words. There were even a few laughable mistakes. But the general sequence of events was made clear. Luo Nan discovered once again that he had overestimated the thickness of the barrier between the secular world and the inner world. The conflict between the 2 factions of the Blood Flame Order had already caused an impact in the secular world. The repercussions had yet to fade. Director Wu learned some knowledge from this. I'm a bit late in understanding that business can be done this way. Actually, the order and capital, the mystic arts and money, have been a perfect match since ancient times. Fortunately, it's not too late. You just said that they didn't have a good ending. That's only relative. In fact, they've already settled down in T-City. The projects they've invested in still receive the full support of the T-City government. They're still the capital protected by the laws of the Earth Coalition government. What's this? This is world-class influence. Director Wu's tongue was like a lotus flower. He tried to convince the man in front of him in one fell swoop. We can completely follow this path. You preach, I make money, we support each other. I don't understand all this. I just want to ask. Director Wu, aren't you going to do a few treatments? I think it's very appropriate to follow the order's method of moderation and getting used to it. Director Wu's expression changed slightly. He laughed again. That's it. I think it can convince a lot of people. Think about it a bit more. This conversation fully illustrated the maxim of not getting along with each other. A conversation that could create billions of wealth ended hastily. Director Wu maintained a polite smile. In reality, he left with resentment. In order to avoid the elevator that was destined to be awkward, the other person waited for a moment. Then he cast his gaze over and swept his gaze over. After all, there were only these two groups of people on the entire platform. Qin Yikun observed carefully and seriously. Who knew that Luo Nan would raise his hand in the open? Is it Dean Wan? Luo Nan listened from beginning to end. He was already convinced that this ability user, who didn't seem to have any inhuman characteristics, was the welfare Dean Wan Ta that he had missed. Luo Nan recognized Wan Ta, but Wan Ta didn't recognize Luo Nan. He had a bit of suspicion on his face. You are, Luo Nan. Luo as in Luo Lai, Nan as in Nan Nan. Wan Ta's eyebrows moved slightly. He had probably heard of this name before. He said it out loud. You're the one that Junping and Little Yong talked about, yeah. Their awakening ceremony went smoothly, right? Luo Nan laughed as he walked forward. It will probably take a month or two for them to truly comprehend and cross the threshold. Many thanks for your help in guiding them. Their path is very proper, and you didn't spoil things through excessive enthusiasm. Wan Ta laughed very peacefully. He chatted about these extraordinary abilities like he was chatting about his daily life. Luo Nan also chatted very naturally. He started chatting casually. Actually, we just went to pay a visit to your home. It's the orphanage in the Forest Wall district. Did Junping and Little Yong have any problems with their training? No. I went with worker Zhai and Diwei Wu. Wan Ta was a bit surprised. Worker Zhai. Di Donghua. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.